We're going to get ourselves set up nice and quick. Sorry, the first couple of minutes of a stream are always a little bit of a scramble. Trying to get yourself together, you know. Just going to check that my audio and everything's coming through. My titles have changed. If I can actually get onto my own profile. God damn! So how are we doing for sound? Yeah, I think we're doing okay for sound. I've got the chat up. I've got the chat up here on my phone. So if anybody wants to jump in chat, just let me know. I will see the messages. I'm just going to tweet this out. Holy shiza Manelli. So if you just bear with me for 2 seconds, I'm just going to share this out. Da, da, da. And then we're gonna get into it. I haven't actually watched this debate yet, by the way. I haven't watched this debate yet, but we will be fact checking and pulling up studies as we go, because people make a lot of claims about this shit, and a lot of people have no fucking idea what they're talking about. A lot of it is just platitudes, virtue signaling, regurgitated bullshit, and that goes on both sides, by the way. But I will say that the Conservative side generally has some more facts in order than the left-wing side does. But just when it comes to this topic. But like, yeah, but yeah, we'll get to that in just a second, though. Let's tweet this out first. So get in here, get in the chat, let me know what you think. Debate me if you're... Oh, I can't spell. Debate me if you dare. Okay, then we'll post the link. We'll just post it to Discord in a couple of places, see where we can get a couple of viewers. It's always nice to have a couple of people in chat. And if anybody who is in chat, by the way, wants to come directly on the stream, let me know in the chat. We'll sort it out. We'll get you in the Discord. Okay? Just post that there real quick. And in WhickTV as well, since we are... Wait a minute. Why am I still in that Discord? I should not be in that Discord. How do I leave this? I didn't... I thought I'd hung up the Discord. I was in Wick's Discord without realising. So, shit. Sorry, I'm trying to be quick, but I'm really fucking slow. Ah! Self-promotion, there it is. Covering the Wick panel from last night. Boom. Okay, I've posted it everywhere I need to post it. Right, let's get back to the chat. So we've got one person in chat right now. Oh wait, no, we've got no people in the chat right now. Probably because I was taking forever to do this. My bad, guys. My bad. Sorry about it. Oh my god, I'm sorry about it. I'm so sorry about it. Right, that's enough of my Curtis Yarvin impression. Right, let's just... let's get ourselves ready here. Let's get ourselves ready. We are going to be starting just this very second. So, yes. We have got one person in the chat. If you want to make yourself known, say hi. Let's go for it. We're going to get locked in. We're going to get strapped in right now. I haven't streamed in a while. I'm looking forward to it. And I've been arguing a lot about police abolition lately on Twitter. And, you know, just generally speaking. And I will say that when it comes to police abolition, it's a very dumb argument, in my opinion. So this is just my point of view before we go into this about what I think about police abolition, and then we'll find some studies as we go along throughout this debate. We'll find some studies. We'll fact check things that people are saying. We'll figure out. We'll get to the bottom of this. But basically, from the research that I've done and how things have gone since maybe say the 80s up until now in terms of policing and stuff like that, policing has actually been an integral part of reducing crime. So I just want to put this in perspective for you for a second. So back in the 90s in New York, right? So this is just one city in the whole of the USA, okay, right? One city, New York, in the 90s. We're going to say about 92, 93, I think, but this was going on throughout the 90s, into the 2000s, really. And every year in New York, there were roughly around 2,000 homicides. 2,000! Right, that's one city, okay? And this was happening year on year. Now the murder rate is something more like 100, couple of hundred. So drastic reduction, huge drastic reduction in homicides, right? And most of the victims of these are black, by the way. Most of the perpetrators are black as well. So you've got this serious situation that has been massively reduced, and one of the big reasons why is because of the kinds of policing that they chose to do. Now, obviously, some of it went a bit over the mark in some areas, you could say. You know, I think they did get a bit racially profile-y, they did get a bit heavy-handed, they did go a bit overboard in places. But when you're dealing with 2,000 homicides a year, I can only expect that that is kind of what is needed, okay? We're talking about situations where people are not even doing drive-bys, they're doing walk-bys. They're walking by in broad daylight, shooting whoever they want, and going off, and a lot of these murders remained unsolved, right? So what we're getting to is that, like, these people out here who want to abolish police, okay? They want to abolish policing. Number one, they don't even really understand what is effective policing most of the time. They only believe that, like, the bad aspects of policing is what was bad and nothing else was bad. They don't believe in crime being bad or being much worse than the problem of policing. So when they bring up the problems of police brutality is a problem, by the way. I'm not trying to try and dispute that it's a problem. What we're trying to talk about here is the priority of problems, right? And bigger problems should take higher priority, right? That should just be a logical thing, right? That we understand as normal adults. So when crime is so much more of a problem than police brutality, it seems disingenuous to me to then be like, we don't need police for black people and all this kind of stuff. When you poll black people, they more or less say that that is what they want. They want more police. And there are studies that show that more police presence, more police patrols and stuff like that do reduce crime very drastically, actually. So these people, like, what they're actually advocating for is free reign for criminals to go crazy in these neighborhoods where the primary victims are going to be innocent black people who have done nothing wrong in their fucking lives. So this is what is happening, right? They can't grasp the situation on the ground because most of the people advocating for abolishing the police are middle-class people who never have had to deal with the consequences of crime. right? So of course they see police as the bad things because they'll listen to activists talking about it, but they won't listen to the people on the ground living in these situations and what they actually want. They don't listen to those people. They listen to the middle class, upper class activists saying police brutality is the problem. That gets projected out through the media, and then becomes the agenda, right? That is what is happening, and that is who these people are. That is what they're doing. Now, I'm glad Counterpoints is in this debate because he's obviously an ex-police officer. Hopefully, he should have some pretty based takes about this situation. He's seen it firsthand. He's been on the ground. So hopefully, he'll have some good things to say. He usually does. But what I'm really looking forward to seeing is what the people who want to abolish the police have got to say and what their arguments are for it. Because realistically, wherever it's been tried, where they've reduced police presence, wherever they've reduced police presence, reduced police patrols, reduced the number of police, crime has gone up. Literally unanimously everywhere. Pretty much everywhere in America where it's ever been tried, ever been talked about, wherever police have been caught thin because of various different things like COVID or riots and stuff like that, where they're stretched thin and they can't get to places. They can't actually get to places to deal with crimes that are happening. Crime has spiked everywhere. This is all data, by the way. This is all facts, I'm telling you right now. This is not feelings. It's not just how I feel about it. It's not how I feel about police. This is literally what is happening. So anyway, enough of my point of view. Let's get straight into the debate because I want to hear what they have to say.
Inflammatory background
let me know if
today on WhickTV.
Okay.
Welcome, gang, to another episode
Let me know
of
if the volume is okay.
a cross-ideological space where we come together to discuss issues of the day, both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And today we are talking all about policing, police abolition, whether or not reform is the way to go. Do we even need a modern police force?
I mean, I would say reform is fine. Reform's always fine. You should always be reevaluating your institutions every so often. But the police have been reevaluated and reformed various times over the last couple of decades. I don't know how much more they can truly be reformed. But anyway, the reason this conversation is even happening is because of the FD signifier fanboys going crazy because they oppose the Cop City in Atlanta, and Destiny is maybe not as bothered, right? And they oppose Cop City mainly on the basis that they just don't agree with cops in general. So it's not even really Cop City that they're against. It's just they're using Cop City as a means to try and say, look, let's just abolish the police in general. I don't know if they actually really care about Cop City in of itself, if that makes sense. But anyway,
of course, in America, do they do more harm than good? We're going to talk about all this and more, right? So welcome and thank you. We have a couple guests that are a little late. They'll be hopefully showing up soon. But the show must go on. So thank you all for being here, and thank you all for coming through. When Paradigm decides he's ready, he'll join us, I'm sure. But he's here, I'm assuming, right, and isn't dead or anything. But anyway, how are both of you today?
Excellent. Life's good. I just had my second child, so single-handedly. Thank you. I'm helping save the white race by bringing in light-eyed, white-skinned, brown-haired children into the world. We don't know if they're cis, but they're definitely male. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Excellent.
Very good.
Well
done.
I'm glad you prioritized coming on my panel over taking care of your family. That is a proper prioritization.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Viv, how's it going with you? How's life on
I've
your
got a
end?
bit of a headache, but I've also got some Szechuan noodles here, so things could be worse.
We're gonna get
Things
some
can always be
bullshit
worse.
from her.
Let me DM Paradigm and see what's up here.
Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera just yet. I'm just rolling myself a split.
Okay,
I meant
hopefully.
Singapore noodles, but I got Szechuan noodles.
Whoops.
I don't know, I must have just clicked the one above it by accident. But you know what? These are okay, actually. These are quite nice. It makes for an interesting change.
A happy accident.
I do hate I'm
Yeah.
going to say I do hate that the Vivian is somewhat a representative for the UK. Not completely, obviously. The Vivian's her own person, but yeah, I just hate that this is an example of a Brit in these spaces. It is quite annoying because there isn't that many of us in the debate spaces, and the Vivian is definitely an embarrassment.
Okay, well, you know what? The show must go on. It might turn into a one-on-one debate.
It's okay, honestly. So I can't think of more like people that I would be more politically polarized with than Mixed Vivian Wolf. But I think we bond over the fact that we both use the term "fuck" like a lot, and we're both not. And I don't think we're like really strong bullshitters. So like
What?
like hiding our power level.
Oh, as in hiding the power level, right? Okay, yeah, okay. I
Or
do
whatever.
agree with that.
So I'm sure we could carry the conversation until other people start popping in.
Okay, well then.
I don't think anybody could accuse me.
Also, Wick, can I just say, if people are going to be late, they should be chastised heavily for this. By the way, I don't think you should be. I don't think you should be tolerating lateness so often. Because
It's hiding my power level.
True.
I think
Vivian
what kind of
will tell
power
you
level
what
would
she
I
thinks.
be hiding? If I was hiding it, it would be bad, right? Like,
Deception is not in her vernacular. She is upfront and has always been very forward about what he thinks and what she wants to happen. But let's start with the
If you want to
counterpoint
get involved in the chat, I will be responding to chat as we go.
today. Policing. What are your thoughts? Let's give us some thoughts here.
Yeah, so my thing is
And if anybody wants to directly debate me, you can join our Discord later. So just let me know. Jump in the YouTube chat or the Twitch chat. They both will come through to the YouTube chat, which I've got my eyes on here.
So my first debates when I came into the Twitch and YouTube political space is that the defund the police and Black Lives Matter movement was going to be counterproductive, not because like police reform isn't a positive goal, but because we're, if you defund without having your parallel structures in place, you're going to cause a whole bunch of community harm, and then that community harm is going to be used as propaganda by the right wing in order to just triple down on policing. I feel like that prediction, which I made in like 2019 or some shit, has basically been the way the political landscape has unfolded. I'd love to go back and say that I told you so, but I would also like to fix the issues that we do have in policing rather than saying that I told you so.
It's not just the problems with policing. Well, the one thing that I'm really annoyed about with these kinds of conversations is that people are just really hesitant to even mention the role of crime and the role of civilians in these situations. Like, at the end of the day, crime's a huge problem, right? And a lot of people are suffering because of crime. Therefore, we do need the police. Yes, police need reform, and yes, police can be corrupt, and yes, we need to do these things. I just don't understand why the focus is so much on the police and not the criminals. I don't get it. Surely there'd be less police with less criminals, right?
When it comes to policing, I think that the challenge is in the fact that they have to be jacks of all trades, masters of none. So when you have people who are dealing with like psych issues and shootings and stabbings and robberies and
let me know if the audio's okay, by the way, guys.
Burglaries and shoplifting and mental health calls and all that kind of stuff. The truth is that you're never going to have somebody that's good at all of those things, and they do fuck up a healthy chunk. So I'm actually okay with defunding within the. I'll wrap it up, but I'm okay with defunding within the concepts of like bringing up parallel institutions like field social workers. I think
we should have better audio now, guys. Sorry about that.
And then maybe building that into not the existing police department budget, because that's going to be a no-go with the policing unions, but cut that out of projected future law enforcement growth. And then, of course, if you can statistically back up the parallel structures, I have no problems with those programs expanding. And I'll leave it there for now.
Well, thank you for being here.
I guess social workers should work in tandem with police. Police shouldn't be the social workers. Maybe there could even be a merger there. You could merge social services with policing or some shit like that. I wouldn't be opposed to certain kinds of reforms like that. That sounds perfectly reasonable to me. But that's just not what is being really prescribed. People are talking about abolishing straight up. So, you know.
And I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Vivian, abolition, police abolition. What is that?
Excuse me. The abolitionist movement is one that encompasses a broad range of societal problems and ills that seeks to reform the prison and policing system, ultimately abolish it, and in its place build up those things that Connor was talking about. Better mental health care, better social care, better education, better housing, right? Was it like
these things are like really long term, really long term goals. In the meantime, abolishing police is not going to actually help those things come to fruition at all.
3/4 of the American prison population is illiterate, right? Like, the numbers of people that need to be incarcerated could be drastically reduced if funds were put in the right place, right? And I don't think anybody can really necessarily disagree with that. Maybe Connor can, I don't know. He gave a kind of funny look. But the root causes of crime, right? Poverty.
No! I'm not going to have this fucking argument being peddled all the fucking time. Poverty correlates with crime. It does not necessarily cause crime, okay? Most people committing violent crimes are not doing it because they're fucking poor, okay? I hate this fucking argument. I hope Connor pushes back on this. I hate it so much.
Poor education, etc., etc., etc. Right,
no, abuse and broken families are a much higher predictor of violence in somebody than poverty is. Okay? And if you're violent, you're more likely to be impoverished, because let's think about the personality of somebody who is violent for a second, right? If somebody's violent, they're usually poor impulse control, struggle with authority, these lead to bad decisions, bad decision making, and lots of these kinds of people cannot usually hold down jobs or become successful. So therefore, because of this situation, if you're a violent person, it's less likely for you to be successful in life already. So is the violent person violent because they're poor, or are they poor because they're violent? That's the question, okay?
This just from looking at the demographics of the US prison population. So the Abolitionist Project is one to build up those social structures, one that envisions a new world where prisons and police become much, much less necessary, to the point that whatever institutions are in the place of having to incarcerate somebody, for example, who is just unavoidably, ridiculously violent, right, look nothing like the police forces of today, and thus that police force is abolished. But it's a long-term project, and it's one that encompasses, like I said, a broad array of social...
Yeah, I get you. Well, I guess my first question then would be like, given that it is a long-term project by your estimation, what are some advocacies that you would do like for right now? Well, first of all, welcome Prior Paradigm. Hi. Can you hear us now?
Oh,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I've been here this whole time. I'm sorry I had to get a haircut.
Like right now, like just.
I have a personal barber that comes to this house and gives me a haircut. Yeah.
Well, it's looking sharp, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate
Welcome
that.
Here.
Well, you just had to get a haircut
we were
right
just
now
giving our thoughts
on
police abolition. So since you're here, Vivian and Counterpoints gave their thoughts. What are yours, sir?
Get them the fuck out. Replace with an entirely new community and system. It's going to suck that there's going to be growing pains in the country, because there's growing pains with everything. Not everything can be done within a week or two. Doesn't fucking matter. Police as an entire institution have absolutely blown the lid on corruption, gangs. They're effectively a state arm of force that cannot be controlled. There are no laws. There are no...
Can't be controlled. I don't believe that for a
limits.
second.
There are no people, there are no things that will ever stop them from having complete and utter control. And I will repeat this point the same way I repeat every other point. If we talk about firefighters, nobody's out there watching firefighters letting fires burn, unless it's a controlled burn in California. If we want to talk about EMS workers, they're not EMS workers unless there are a few who let people die. They usually just transport them best as they can to the hospital. It feels like police are the only times where if they ever stop you or you get into an altercation with them, you are absolutely powerless by factors of the law, by factors of society, by factors of social stigma. You cannot aggress towards cops. You cannot have an issue with whatever a cop tells you to do. While we
That's
say
actually false. Didn't Tupac Shakur famously win a court case against police because the police were beating up some guy and he shot them both? And that was actually classified as self-defense, I'm pretty sure. So he got off on that because of that. And I think a lot of people get off with attacking police based on this kind of thing. You actually be surprised how often violent criminals actually get off because of lack of evidence or because of arguments like self-defense and stuff like that.
say there, you know your rights. It's pretty much up to them whether or not you live or die. And if there are a group of people who are hired by the state and or city to carry out these actions, and there are no statutes of limitations on how far they can go, then they are an arm of the. They are.
I do see some of the problems he's talking about, though. Not all of them, but some of the things he's saying, I do agree with. That last bit there with like qualified immunity and like statute of limitations and stuff. Like, I do agree with those. I think the police should still be scrutinized. We can have a better system than that is already in place. But I understand why they try to create protections for police, because they're dealing with violence, right? And violence is a messy thing to deal with. So it can produce errors, it can produce lapses in judgment and stuff like that. But I still think like people, if they're, if they're negligent, if they are malicious or whatever, they should be held accountable to the law, 100%.
An arm of the state that must be eliminated. Abolish all police. ACAB.
Jesus.
Pretty
Very
strong.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, we went from like, oh man, we're gonna be so productive. I'm gonna walk through how to do police reform from a conservative lens to Jesus Christ, we're gonna have to relitigate fucking everything.
Well, yeah.
Can I focus on the productive part first, and then we can get into ripping each other's throats out?
Whatever you want to do, go for it.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I almost disagree with like 99% of what the fuck you just said. So we'll get into that in a minute. So if we were going to actually say that what we want to do is create parallel structures to the point that we render law enforcement no longer necessary, or like a minimalist arm of the state where you only have to use them in very extreme circumstances.
Well, I'm an anarchist. I want there to be no state, but like fundamental.
Right. This is what I don't understand about people like the Vivian, okay? The Vivian is a trans person, correct? Yes? No? I'm pretty sure, the colours are there, the flag is there. I'm pretty sure the Vivian is a trans person, okay? How do you have trans rights with no state? How do you have rights at all without a state? The state is there to actually enforce your rights. That is literally what it's there for. If you have an anarchist state, we'll use the term state just to mean nation. If you have like an anarchist nation that has no government body, right? Nobody has rights in that country. Okay, you can formulate groups that can try to enforce the rights between themselves as much as possible, but you don't really have like an actual cohesive version of rights. Like if another group comes over and just kills you all and enslaves you all, there's no other people that are really going to do anything about that, especially if they're like the most powerful dominant group in the area. Like, whereas the state has monopolized that situation, and then they give a vast amount of freedoms to the broad groups, minority groups, everyone, that are generally enforced, right? Now, they're not enforced in every single circumstance all the fucking time, but generally speaking, that is how it works, right? And then when in those times where it isn't enforced properly, that is where they should be held accountable to the law or whatever, And they are increasingly, more and more, police are being held to account, and that is a good development, and that should keep on going. I've got no problem with that. But that doesn't mean we need to abolish the police, okay? And a trans person wanting to abolish the police they are literally going, or even the state in general is literally going against their own thing that they want. Like, if people wanted to kill, if people in the country of no state wanted to kill all the trans people, yes, the trans people may have some allies, but that would basically be a small war within the country. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't understand this logic at all.
Immensely, you still have to have.
It's like someone like the Vivian is probably vehemently against Kyle Rittenhouse. In fact, I know the Vivian is against Kyle Rittenhouse, and is against people like fucking that guy on the subway train choking out that black fella and everything. I'm sure the Vivian's really against that, but that is what you would have, community policing, if you had no state. So what the fuck? This
Some
is
way
ridiculous.
of keeping somebody who is like unavoidably, uncontrollably dangerous away from the rest of the population. I don't think that should look anything like the prison we have today or the police force that we have today.
Why?
Sure,
But like, I'm not
And how would
proposing
you
we
make it
just
different?
let somebody who's
What
clearly
resources are you using for this?
like fucking serial killers just walk around, right?
Okay, but let me try to steelman anarchism as hard as I possibly can, because I'm not an anarchist. I think there's always going to be some level of power, organization, governmental bodies, et cetera, et cetera. But even within like anarchist philosophy, I think most people who are incrementalist, what they say is like, we have to create parallel structures. So we have, families that are teaching people. We create alternatives to the public education system. We create alternatives to police by basically working within our communities on a volunteer basis in order to reduce violence, et cetera, et cetera. And then ultimately,
But what's the point? Right, you have a state run. If you're the kind of person that wants to be able to teach your children whatever you want, guess what? You fucking can anyway. Like, you can send them to the state school and then teach them extra shit, right? What? They're just recreating government again. It's just so stupid. You can already teach your kids whatever the fuck you want, and you can already homeschool them. Like,
what happens is like, you're not grabbing an AK-47 and then Molotov cocktailing the local police department. It's just that people are calling the police department less because independent citizens without the state are solving the problems before the state uses those problems
The problem
as a
comes.
justification for their power.
The problem comes when the police force come into your neighborhood and fucking murder somebody that is in your community, right?
okay, but what if that person is a violent person threatening the lives of other people with their actions? Like getting into shootouts or even conducting just drive-by shootings or getting into big fistfights or threatening behavior, stalking, harassment, violent harassment, like where they're targeting people's homes and stuff like that.
That's when the Molotovs start fucking flying. That's when the Minneapolis precinct burned down, right?
Sure. Sure. So let's So, but let's talk about like incrementalism.
Like if the police aren't just coming down into a community and just going, "Hey, that guy over there, let's shoot that guy." It's not happening
from this
like
perspective, because I actually think that there is a conservative argument for creating. So you would want to create the parallel structures in order to eventually eliminate the state, because you would basically want to minimize the amount of violence that are taken out on individual people who are a part of a state, even if you don't like the state ultimately.
These things are simultaneous, right? Like, you have to advocate for the demilitarization of the police. You have to advocate for the restriction of the police's abilities, right? What they're freely allowed to do. You have to advocate for greater oversight of them. You have to advocate to reduce their power at the same time as you're increasing your power.
You don't have to worry about momentum, because I already have things to pick apart here. So here's my thing though. I don't think that you're going to succeed in a political environment unless you're saying we are creating the parallel things first so they can take the weight off of the institution. Because basically what's going to happen is if you can have all the fucking parallel agendas that you want as a political activist.
What weight? What weight? That's okay. So what weight is one of the questions, because
I can give you a specific example, but sorry, go ahead.
No, I know what you mean, right? Like there are obviously things that there are no structures in place to deal with, right? I have this thing with fucking other anti-fascists where like there are some real dipshit kiddie fucking anarchists who are like, you should never contact the FBI ever, right? And I'm like, if I'm in a Nazi Discord and I uncover a fucking terrorism plot, I'm contacting the FBI. Who the fuck am I going to call? The John Brown Gun
Well,
Club?
I'm curious.
Right? Like, they're not going to be able to disarm.
Wow, Viv, now and again, you know, a broken clock strikes twice every day. You know what I mean? Like now and again, the Viv can actually be a little bit based. At least she's not completely insane. But like, it's weird how she can have this logic for these kinds of situations, but then it doesn't extend out into the broader implications of her like ideological worldview. It's like, like in an anarchist society, all you would have is the John Brown Gun Club. Like, what the fuck? What are you talking about, man? That's all you would have. It's so stupid.
I'm curious because I stop just real quick. I'm curious because I want to get Paradigm in on this too. I don't want.
It's like, what is she gonna do in the anarchist society? And she uncovers the terrorist plot, but there's no FBI. Like, who's she calling then?
Just a one-on-one right here, like.
So I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm listening. Counterpoints is usually rational. So if he says he has an argument, then like I would like to hear him out. I was enjoying the back and forth.
For you specifically.
At least this guy's being good faith. I can give him that. Like, he said that he is usually rational. So like, I assume this guy at least has some respect for who Counterpoints is, which is actually nice. A lot of people don't necessarily do that, but like that is actually, considering his position in this argument, I didn't think he would have that kind of respect for Counterpoints there.
Go for it.
Right? Like, so do you think under what circumstances, right, given you have your thoughts towards the police, would you call the police? Right? Would you pick up the phone, dial 911 and say, police, something's going on. I need help, or you need to come now, right? So Viv gave an example, right, of if she uncovers a terrorist plot, she's calling the FBI. What about you?
In any given situation that goes down in a certain way, generally I don't move in those circles where that's necessary, and the way my community is set up, or at least the way people like me in my neighborhood, I generally don't have to deal with problems that can't be solved by like other means, if we understand what I'm talking about. So
I don't.
It would
be more clear.
Just for
can't
my
be. Audience's sake.
I like how everybody but you.
So he's talking about like vigilantism essentially, or maybe even gang activity. Like if somebody causes a problem up here, then we know people that'll sort them out, kind of a thing. It's like, well, is that always good? Like if there's no investigations, if there's no real knowing of things, like this isn't like an easily abusable situation, is it not?
It's like, just if shit go down in the hood, I got people who would look out for me. I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Okay.
So it would require, for me to ever call the police, it would require something that I wouldn't want my hands dirtied in, if that makes sense.
You've got some of those. You've got some of those structures already, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Exactly.
But hold on. So
he's talking about like going back to lynch mobs and shit, essentially. It's just like, yeah, it's all right. We've already got these structures. We've got our own posses that we round up and like deal with the criminals and stuff. And it's like, well, mate, if you can't understand how that is actually not a good thing, then this conversation is very difficult to move forward with. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you get roving bands of KKK members lynching people and stuff. It's fucking stupid.
We're gonna view the
based on what? Like somebody crying about something that may or may not have happened, and there's no investigation.
Institution of law enforcement, and we're gonna view your parallel structures probably a whole lot differently. The way that I've interacted with, let's be generous. Let's call these parallel social structures. Some people might call them, gangs, or basically loose affiliations of people who are competent and comfortable with violence.
I mean,
I'd call them posses, maybe. But
police are a gang, dude.
What's that?
The police are a fucking gang, dude. Like,
okay, if we want to get
In a certain respect, I do agree with that, but they are a regulated gang. Like they have rules. I'm not saying they always follow those rules, but what I'm saying is that generally they have rules that they stick to. They are held accountable to the public. They have a relationship to the public that is very different than the relationship to gangs and the public. Like gangs and the public, they tend to put the what would you call it? They put the community into a state of fear. They snitches get stitches and all that shit. They basically rule with an iron fist. Now that's not necessarily completely and always utterly true in every situation, but this is kind of the culture that they try to breed in these kinds of areas, and it's just not the same with police. In fact, police are there to literally uphold your right to free speech, not to like curtail it for their betterment. Not saying it can't happen, but I just mean it's just not generally what happens. It's just not generally what happens. So
get into but
unless you're living in like some authoritarian state, but we're not.
This is where we literally get into like a fundamental conversation about like the Leviathan. Like so it's I forget the paradigm between like the two.
Jungian shit into this. He should not be bringing Jungian shit into this. They're not gonna fucking respond well to that.
Books from like fucking 500 years ago. But
I know you're going to use inflammatory language. I'll throw it straight back at you. All right.
Okay. Well, I'm not. I'm running on 5 hours of
being
sleep, so you're gonna have to forgive me a little bit. But basically, like I believe in this concept of power, where power abhors a vacuum, and as a result, it's better to have a relatively benevolent, relatively benign, relatively neutral Leviathan, basically a huge power that can fuck you over if you get out of line.
That ain't the police, right? If I'm a okay. So the one of the things that I wanted to mention, right? If I'm a parent of a trans kid in Florida right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ain't talking to the police for shit. I'm trying to get out the fucking state, but I'm not talking to the police for shit, because as soon as they know that I have a kid who is trans, right? Even if that kid's fucking like 16, 17 years old, they can take that kid away from me.
Can they?
Can we talk about the black?
Can they do that? Let's fact check that right now, because I do not believe that is true. If that is true, that is pretty fucked up. Like, I will totally agree with the Vivian on that. That is quite fucked up. The only times I'd say that they should probably be taken away is if they are being given hormones or surgeries and the parents are allowing that. But if the kid is just like dressed as a girl or like having like a social transition or whatever, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's kind of up to them. It's probably a bit weird. There probably is weird dynamics to that. Like sometimes it's probably normal, organic. Sometimes it could be like the mother or the parents, the father, like kind of pushing it on them in some way or another for their own kind of voyeuristic reasons. But generally speaking, though, I reckon that would just be whatever. But yeah, let's find out. Can trans children be taken away in Florida? Let the state take transgender minors away from their families if they are receiving gender-affirming care. What do they mean by gender-affirming care? Because if what they mean by that is hormones and surgery, then yeah, I agree with that. The bill passed the Senate by a vote of 26 to 13. Does it actually say... No, I don't want to donate. Fuck off. Subjected to or are threatened with being subjected to gender-affirming care, which includes puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that, actually. But she's not actually saying it like that, though. She's just saying it, oh, if you have a trans kid, then they could take you away. But they have to have evidence of you giving them, like, hormones and shit, right? And puberty blockers. If you're not doing that, then that's fine, isn't it? Should be fine, right?
Can we get into the transes?
I don't think... It doesn't matter about it being the transes, okay?
I want to know...
I don't know, because You're right that
at
the
the very-
institution is not benevolent or benign for certain communities. I can concede that already.
Yeah, all a significant amount of communities and protesters and a whole bunch of other people
What?
who like
Could they be?
Okay, I have a question. I have a question for both
pre-existing
Viv.
ideal.
I have a question for Viv and Paradigm, if you will. So, what makes your parallel social structure, as Counterpoints called them,
Very charitably.
better than the police? Like, why is
I can
that
answer that.
something
I can
you
answer that.
prefer?
Yeah, go for it.
Please.
I can answer that. I'm going to do this in one sentence. I think it would be a lot less. I think it would be a lot easier to just say if ICE was ran by like the people that they're deporting, the style or methods in which they would use to deport people would be a lot more humane. Does that make sense? People who look like you know how to deal with situations that you've been in. People who grew up in your neighborhood.
That is such a fucking shit cop-out, because, like, if it was run by Mexicans, right? Let's say it's Mexicans all crossing the border or whatever, and Mexicans are also the ones doing the deporting. Have you seen the Mexican government? Have you seen the prisons in Mexico? Have you seen, like, how they treat their own? Like, what are you talking about? You're talking absolute shit. Like, or is it that they all have to be illegal immigrants? Like, when they come into the country, they then have to serve as people that deport the other one. I don't know. Would it be more humane? Would that? How would that? I don't know. Would that work? I don't know. That just seems. I think he's just making. I'm not saying maybe he's. I don't know if he's actually saying that is how it should be, but like maybe he's just trying to make a point about. There's like a lack of empathy or something.
To know how to deal with the situations you've been in.
Okay,
With police structures, they hire completely out, like all the way out, and basically the police presents a presence of fear. There's no reason for them to be there other than to what?
They're meant to prevent crime. So if there's like a gathering of people and it's getting rowdy, or if it's a hotspot where there's been like 10 crimes in the space of a few days that are like actually kind of serious domestic or violent crimes in the community between different people or whatever, robberies, they're there to deter the crime just from their presence alone. And two, if there is any crime in the immediate vicinity, can be there quickly to do something about it before it gets beyond what it needs to be. It's fucking obvious. Why is he sat there like, there's clearly nothing that they're there for? What are you on about?
Is that rhetorical or not rhetorical?
That's up to you.
Okay, I think they're there to deter property crime and also intervene in violent crime, but we obviously don't agree there.
I didn't say that. I agree with you.
Okay. That's what they should be there
Then why are you saying it like that?
for, and that should be their primary role served, and that's what I would like to think the ideals of it are. I have, if you want to keep going, but I do have two counter examples that I want to share.
Okay, so I will keep going, but only in this sentence. Just remember that the counter examples that you bring about won't change the stature of what Vivian just said about certain communities. If you have different communities in a neighborhood that can't respond to the same arm the same way, then the problem has to be with the arm. It can't be with the communities because we either remove the communities or the arm. And I think that everyone here would want to argue, I think it's better to remove the arm. That, you know, you're cutting the boy's hand off for sticking his finger in the fan.
Okay, so I'm okay with your analogy so far. I'm tracking them. Let me give you my counter examples. And I'm going to bust out a notepad because I can understand this conversation is going to get complex. So, number one, my experience with parallel organizations, which I would say is basically mutually assured destruction within like violent organizations, has not been good. So what would happen in my community and in a community that was near me? There's a community that's near me called Apopka. And basically the way that it works is that they have mutually assured destruction when it comes to violence. If there's competing drug organizations that are within close proximity to each other, one of the members from that organization gets killed. Basically, either the person who committed that murder or a family member of that person who committed that murder would be dead within a week. Literally, there was a saying that like homicides in Apopka comes in twos because literally one person's dead, then somebody else is dead soon, and we would have those flare-ups. So I don't exactly think that is a great way That's like fucking some real medieval justice frontier bullshit. So
I
I don't view
will-
that as
I
better
will
than
absolutely
criminal.
concede.
Okay, he's kind of making my point a bit here now, which is good. He didn't say it in the same way, but yeah, he's getting to the same kind of gist of what I was saying.
And agree with you on that point. I have the stance that as much as I want police to be abolished, I don't think certain communities, especially underfunded ones, have the ability to rally the support and like systems as fast as possible to run a parallel system. But like,
Yeah.
I don't have a choice in the matter because I cannot literally trust people who like. I'll tell you, if we're going with counterexamples, the very first video I ever made.
So he'd be more willing to trust gang members over police. Right. I just don't understand what would be giving him that impression. Like, why? Why?
I was looking for film
Seems weird.
property, and a cop that was retired happened to live next door, and he's literally.
Gangs get into shootouts over, like, petty bullshit. Like, if you ever listen to drill rap, like, you find out that, like, a lot of this shit, it does get historical, like, but a lot of shit happens for, like, really petty reasons. People will just be saying shit and hurting people's feelings, and then they're on the lookout, and it's all pride, and a lot of it, it's not even to do with money or anything like that.
His wife came out and literally screamed at me, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're trespassing. You're one of those thugs that comes here and spray paints all the time. I'm gonna get my husband, and he's a cop and he's got a gun." So he came down with the gun, pointed it at me, and told me to go away. So I went away. Like had to have been 4 minutes later, DT swarmed me. I spent 2 days in jail. Like, and I was released and the charge was nothing. Oh, we made a mistake. You could just go home.
Wait.
So I don't exactly think that
System, but like
Yeah.
I don't have a choice in the matter because I cannot literally trust people who like. I'll tell you, if we're going with counterexamples, the very first video I ever made, I was looking for film property, and a cop that was retired happened to live next door. And he's literally, his wife came out and literally screamed at me, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're trespassing. You're one of those thugs that comes here and spray paints all the time. I'm gonna get my husband, and he's a cop and he's got a gun." So he came down with the gun.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, that is fucked up. That is fucked up. The
Pointed
police
at-
should have done their due diligence and, like, asked him why he was there. Well, he left. But, like, wait, if he was going down to film property, does that mean he was with someone to view the properties? Do you just go on your own to stuff like that? What is... I don't... Why was he on his... It sounds like he was on his own. Okay, I don't know.
At me and told me
Maybe I'm just thinking about it too much. But...
to go away. So I went away. Like had to have been 4 minutes later, DT swarmed me. I spent 2 days in jail. Like, and I was released and the charge was nothing. Oh, we made a mistake. You could just go home. It's like, even in the realm of them doing their job properly, it's going to fuck with people.
No repercussions, no fucking compensation, nothing for those kinds of wrongful arrests. They just pick you up, put you in a fucking van, you spend fucking 2 days in the police station, your life is... that's 2 days out of your fucking life.
What would the just out of curiosity, Viv,
been watching
under
too
these
much
parallel
of the
structures that you envision, what would be the
I fucking hate how much we're like focusing in on this idea of like parallel structures as in like a force that is like the police that does police
Okay, well maybe this
things,
is my
right?
misunderstanding
Because-
then. So can
yeah,
you please
well,
like
I
just
mean-
like correct me here?
So what I said at the very start, right, is that like funding, community activism, fucking institutional power, all needs to be put into the places where it's going to help to reduce crime in and of itself. Right, education was one of the huge examples that I brought up because 75% of the American prison population is illiterate. Right, fucking.
What is the education budget? USA education budget. So it's 174 billion. What is the USA police budget? It's probably higher. 129 billion. That's a cool 50 billion difference. And a 51 billion of that is on courts. That says 1.5%, but I don't understand what that means. Is that 1.5% of the total budget? Because that's not 1.5% of 129 billion, is it? That's silly. 86 billion on corrections. I'm assuming that's just like investment or whatever. But courts will be like court cases where people are suing successfully against the government for police misconduct. So a lot of the police budget is made up of people getting their money back on being mistreated. So she said there was no compensation, but there it is. It's right there.
Housing, food security, all of this sort of shit, right? We know poverty breeds crime, right? We know that like crime does better in impoverished areas. So if we address the root causes of crime, then we have less of a need for the police, right? So whatever quote unquote parallel.
I do agree with this method. I just think that Vivian doesn't understand that this is kind of what people are already trying to do. But the police still need to exist. I guess maybe she's talking about abolishing police in like a very long-term context, but like, even still, what she's talking about, having all these government structures and stuff, it still has a state, so it's not really an anarchist position. But whatever.
Structure, as Counterpoints wants to call it. When I talk about parallels, I'm talking about parallel power structures, so it's entirely different. But like, whatever parallel structure you're talking about doesn't even have to do the work that the police currently are supposed to do, and certainly doesn't do the work that the police do, right?
Okay, so
They do
yeah,
something
so I
entirely
want to address this from a conservative lens, because basically what we're talking about oftentimes in these conversations, and excuse me if I monopolize the next minute or so, but oftentimes where we hit a crossroads is we have this thing where you're like, well, we need to demilitarize the police, so we need to take away their trucks, and we need to take away their body armor, we need to take away their AR-15 rifles, and we need to slash their budget by 10% or 20%. All of these are non-starters with existing municipal governments. It's just not going to happen. And then if you do succeed in doing these things, or even if there's the perception that you succeed in these things, when homicide takes a tick or property crime takes a tick up or whatever, they're going to argue back in order to reinstitute the police, basically.
So what you're talking about?
Hold on, Mix. That was not even the point. That was the setup.
Oh,
to the
right,
point, so
okay.
I want to finish the point. So what I think you would need to do, which I know an anarchist is not going to like, but I think a statist would like, is you're going to have to cut these things that are going to reduce crime that is not law enforcement themselves out of projected future budgets. So if you wanted field social workers, or if you wanted pre-K programs, or if you wanted universal high quality education, or if you wanted universal health care, then you're going to have to get those things almost separate from having a conversation about law enforcement, where it's going to be like federal subsidization, particularly in the United States, for some of the programs that we've just talked about. And then when it comes to like field work, like unarmed field social workers and all that kind of shit, you're going to have to cut it out of future budgets, not existing budgets, because cops are going to fucking piss and moan if you're taking 2 patrol officers off the road or 2 detectives against their thing. But if you say, hey, we were planning on giving you 3 officers in the year 2027, instead you're going to get 2 officers, and then we're going to give you a field social worker. No, like the political upheaval is going to be infinitely less.
You're just talking about the practicalities of like how to actually even achieve this kind of downsizing of the police in favor of other services, right? Which is totally fine. I mean, but it's not an argument against the position that this is something that should be occurring, right? You're just saying it's impractical to abolish the police tomorrow, and I'm kind of vaguely there with you to a certain degree. I think for the vast majority of people, they probably aren't going to benefit from having interactions with the police. But in those instances of serious violent crime, and where and terrorism, and what was the other fucking thing you said? Property crime.
Deterring property crimes.
I don't think they do deter property crime in any real sense, but sure. There might be situations in which the police are like needed for a small minority of people currently, but the vast majority of people are not going to benefit from interactions with the police. It's just at worst a time sink, at best a time sink, and at worst they can end up losing their fucking lives.
Okay, but here's where I want to kind of dispel like just some lefty or progressive or anarchist conceptions. Like there is data from the I believe it's like the community orienting policing whatever grant from the federal government. There's like another data set that says the same thing, that basically like a police officer within a municipality like correlates with a 1 to like 1.3% drop in crime across the fucking board. So to say that they don't do anything is not correct, and to say that they don't deter crime is not correct. Hold on.
Based.
I promise
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll listen
Go
to
ahead.
you.
I'm just raising my hand. Sorry.
But that's not to say. So, for instance, if there's a 1.3% drop in crime with each police officer that you add, if you add like a high quality preschool teacher and you get like a 1.5% or a 1.8% fucking drop in crime, then obviously it's more effective to invest in education rather than like policing. So you should still have both, because the truth is that there's going to be roles that need to be fulfilled by both, but you should also focus on the most effective ways of reducing crime within the community, which is not opposed to law enforcement. It's something that pushes in the same direction.
Okay, Paradigm, you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Wick. How many people would it take to get on this panel for you to hear a racial slur? What's the percentage? What's the chance?
Like a racial, what kind of racial slur are we talking?
Anyone, or it could be like a comedy joke thing, Karen or whatever.
Like towards what group? Like if
no, not towards a group. Nice try. No, I just mean in general. Oh. Nice try.
How much money would I have to get?
No,
because it's not.
No. I'm saying to you. I'm saying to you, how many people do you think would have to be in here to interject in this conversation for somebody to get super mad and like say a slur?
What is the fucking point in this question right now? What is the fucking point of this?
What's the percentage? 8? Okay. So I say this to say
I don't know. Okay, I'm really struggling with the question here, because if anyone says a slur, a racial slur, dropping the N-word or something, I kick them off. I don't know.
Right? No, we're not saying how much would you allow it. I'm just saying the odds, because I'm trying to relate it to
odds.
You can't control, like, so you say there's like data that shows there's a drop in crime. If 3 of us were, if 4 of us were in the same room, us 4 here.
Okay, he's hitting a huge logical fallacy here, right? Because what he's trying to say is, you can't control things, right? You don't know, like, who's going to do what, right? So, you can't really control for this anyway, so the police are pointless, kind of a thing. But that's not the point. Like, if he kicks people off for saying slurs, that's going to reduce the amount of people that are going to want to say slurs on his thing. If he allows people to say slurs on his thing and doesn't kick them off, for that, more people are going to feel emboldened to do that kind of thing on his panels, right? So the amount of people it would take before a slur would be said, it would be lower. Whereas it would be higher if he kicks people off for it, because more people would not want to actually do that and get kicked off. So what is this hypothetical, man?
In the same room, and 3 of us had guns. I don't think the 4th person would be would be willing to like pull some shit. You know what I mean? And if that's the case, then are the cops really the reason why crime is deterred? Or is it just because there's somebody there who could shoot me, there's somebody there who could arrest me, I'm not going to steal this old lady's purse?
I understand.
That is a deterrent to crime then, isn't it? Because you were already thinking about stealing this old lady's purse. But because that guy over there might shoot you or arrest you, you're not going to do it. That's literally how crime is deterred, you fucking imbecile.
Your analogy, just real quick, but I'm just letting you know, it's not the number of people, it's who's there. I
was
had to
being
cancel a
facetious.
VOD.
I was being
I
facetious.
know, I
being
had to cancel a VOD
Yeah.
because I had a
He
panel
thinks he has a point, but he doesn't have a fucking point.
on trans issues, and they kept dropping the F slur. They just couldn't stop. The F slur, F slur, F slur, and I was like, well.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. That he said it, and I gotta pick on it. So you had a bunch of people talking about a marginalized community, and it got heated.
They were all the part of the community.
I think you're talking about.
Yeah,
You talking about the
I'm
panel
being
with-
facetious as well, but I couldn't.
Right. No, I understand from like your brand. Sorry to even begin to associate you in that way. I was trying to make a 1-to-1, like we can see this in real time comparison. Thank you. But you did mention.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Wick has the fucking power in this situation, right?
Thank
If I
you.
call myself a T-slur, as acceptable as it is for me to call myself a T-slur or an F-slur, if I do that, then Wick's gonna get fucking upset, and I'm up here on his panel.
Come on. All right, hold on. I actually have a point though against what you said. So this is genuinely what I believe though. What you said, where it's like, is it the presence of law enforcement and them serving their high-minded idealism where they have a shiny badge and a uniform and American democracy and all this kind of bullshit? Is that what's preventing crime? Or is it just a dude with a gun who could beat your fucking ass if you step wrong?
I don't know why you're arguing over a fucking 1% decrease anyway. Like 1%
No,
is
per
fucking
police
nothing
officer.
compared to the crime.
So if you've got like thousands of police officers in a city, then that's going to reduce crime on like a per police officer basis.
That's like committed.
If
Having a police presence provides a 1%.
Also, look at how many crimes there are. It's like tens of thousands, if not millions, of crimes every year. Like a 1% decrease in millions is fucking loads. it's actually quite a lot of crimes.
Drop in crime, I'd say they're not worth the fucking money you're spending on them.
Okay, Mixed Vivian Wolf, this doesn't make any fucking sense because if you add 10 cops and you drop crime by 10%, that's a significant fucking deal.
Okay, this is an analogy.
It's per cop. She didn't understand. He needs to explain it to her again.
Oh, now
this isn't even an analogy. This is just like
sorry. You're saying crime drops 1% for every cop in the area.
I can look it up real quick if you want me to. Yeah.
I thought you would have been prepared with that.
So if you have 100, so you only need 100 cops in New York then.
No, of course it.
Okay,
No, this was like relative. It's like relative to this study, relative to like what they found in this study for this one particular precinct, I think. So it was very localized in the data. But what they're showing is basically that like, more cops equals less crime, essentially. So like, it's not literally that every single cop everywhere in every city, everywhere, all the time. It's like it's relative to things. You know what I mean? It's relative.
It correlates with the population. So, like, it's always going to be population oriented. Community.
That's what he's trying to say, but what he means to say is that it's relative.
Oriented policing.
It all seems like we're just going down weird fucking
right. So the rabbit hole here, I'm gonna try to pick us out of it because that's what I do best. If police are a deterrent to crime, what types of crime? Because
all of them.
Most of the crimes that
generally
that occur that police pick up on are things that I could probably solve with, extra food stamps.
But definitely the most important ones, like violent crime,
housing, things like that, universal basic income, just, some things that deter people other than cops from needing to do crime to make money to live. Because that's the general reason why people do crime.
But you still have to live with a whole bunch of conservatives, by the way. And people are not. I have a whole bunch of like really racially charged words to say in reference to that.
Please don't drop slurs on my channel, but go ahead.
It's not slurs. It's not slurs. It's like a mean word. But basically, what you're kind of saying are the way Gibbs, G-I-B-S, Gibbs. So what you're basically saying is pay people not to commit crime. That's kind of what you just told me. That's how a conservative is going to read that. Now.
it's just also doesn't bear out in the data because, like, I don't care how much money you've got. If there's been violence in the home, the likelihood that you are going to be violent is much higher. It's got really nothing to do with your poverty level when it comes to violent crime, although it can exacerbate the issue. Obviously, it is a compound. Poverty is more like a compounding factor into these situations rather than a literal cause and effect. If that makes sense.
Now, I could steal a man
I
that
don't
and
know the fuck
say,
how a conservative is going to read it. Conservatives are dumb as fuck and wrong on a whole bunch of issues. Like,
Of just being like, I am so much better, even though I have no fucking clue what I'm talking about. And I'm an anarchist, but all my views completely conflict with that idea.
I'm arguing for what's right and what's true, not like for what conservatives are
What is right and what is true? You haven't said anything right or true so far, pretty much. Like,
going to think is right or true. If I did that, I'd be.
I
wouldn't-
believe that she thinks it's right and true, but like that doesn't necessarily make it right and true. Her own perception of herself isn't even right and true, apparently.
be able to argue for any.
Can I
right
ask?
or true
Okay, I have a
position.
question. I have a question for the panel. Because you both have mentioned this. By both, I mean Paradigm and Viv have mentioned this several times. That if we get at the root cause of property crime, to be clear, which is poverty, right? That we can reduce crime significantly. Two questions. One, do you think that eliminates crime? And if not, how much does it? Are we talking a 50% reduction? Are we talking about 80% reduction? Can you ballpark it for me? Right?
I got an answer for you. I got actual stats and figures for you.
Please.
Oh,
When
nice.
the police took a break in 2010 and 2013, crime dropped by 12%. When the police were angry at us and they were, oh, you're defunding us and you don't treat us nicely with respect, they all said, we're not going to walk our beats.
Did reported crime drop?
Crime drop.
Okay.
No.
Crime dropped.
How do you
By
even,
police
how do you
standards.
even, I'm
And I was
curious
there.
how you actually. I'm curious
In
how
New
you
York?
actually quantify that in the absence of police and people.
Hold on.
So-
Connor's
I'm
having.
fixing my
Connor's
shit,
having.
and then
oh,
this is
okay.
also this is also
So,
bullshit.
Vivian,
Hold on. No,
wait,
sorry.
no,
real
come
quick.
on. You can't say wild shit and then just
real
fucking
quick,
not have it
let
contested.
Connor. If
What?
Connor
I
posts-
mean, to be fair,
could
like
Google it.
I only asked the question that you would probably ask. I'm asking him like
Okay,
how
I'll
the
wait.
data is collected. That's all.
right, and it's the lesser interactions. It's the lesser interactions. Most of the crime that happens in New York City is not
How was
violent.
the data collected? Is a question they're asking you. Like how did
By
they
police.
collect and collate this data?
That I'm gonna have to Google. Sorry.
So if police weren't recording crime, and the recorded crime went down by 30% because the police weren't doing their jobs, is that crime going down, or is that just they didn't have the statistics?
I only had that one fact on the top of my head.
Like, what the... I need to find this. Maybe we should find this. The police left and crime went down. When did he say this was happening? Is anybody in the chat here? Right. Major crime complaints fell when cops took a break from proactive policing. Proactive policing efforts on low-level offences, major crime reports in the city actually fell, according to a study. The findings published in the journal Nature Human Behaviour put a crack in the broken windows theory of policing. Order maintenance policers, hyperproactive policing is formed by the broken windows theory. The idea that by fighting smaller crimes, it's possible to create a lawful environment. I will say that they could probably get a bit overzealous with this. Like, you know what I mean? They catch someone fucking throwing some litter and then they go fucking crazy about it. Instead of just saying, like, oh, just put it back in the bin, they'll, like, actually write them up and, like, do shit. Like, there's no need to go that hard on it, you know what I mean? And it's only, like, if they refuse to throw it in the bin or some shit like that, then you would have to maybe write them up, but... You don't need to be so heavy-handed. Like, some people are so heavy-handed, they will see the slightest thing and just jump on it, you know? Like, they could do with, like, giving a bit more grace to people. On the little things, you know? Okay, serious concern. So maybe it did have an effect because like maybe the stress of that, maybe like having less of that stress translated into people being slightly less stressed in general, so it reduced crime in a way. Um. I'm just trying to quickly scan this. This makes me. During the slowdown, the researchers found the police dramatically reduced the number of criminal summonses and SQFs, a confirmation that indeed the low-level proactive policing activities had gone down. Non-major crime arrests also took a dip, so did narcotics arrests. What happened to serious crime? Scientists found that civilian populations' complaints of major crimes dropped by about 3 to 6% during the slowdown. While we cannot entirely rule out the effects of underreporting, the authors wrote, our results show that crime complaints decreased rather than increased during a slowdown in proactive policing, contrary to deterrence theory. Yeah, disproportionately, the vicious feedback between proactive police and major crime can exacerbate political and economic inequality across communities. Certainly, this evidence should not be generalized across the broad array of proactive policing strategies. It is limited to a very specific approach applied very broadly in a large urban area. But at the same time, as the authors note, they have capitalized on an interesting natural experiment that allows them to overcome the casual limitations of previous non-experimental work. This is well done social science. My point is simply that we don't know what the shock actually tells us because we don't have a detailed understanding of what the police were doing. Okay, so we don't know if they were actually even there to be taking reports. So my idea about the police not doing their jobs as much, therefore they could have just been recording less crime as well in general because they're just not as active. So this gap suggests that we need experimental evidence on the impacts of blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, okay, so it's a little bit more dubious than what he's saying. It's not just like, yeah, it goes down nowhere, blah, 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 no questions asked. Like, no, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But okay, we'll give him the point a little bit here. We'll give him like, 60% of the point there, There does seem to be some small link with that. I think maybe there is something to be said for the police maybe not sweating the small stuff so much, I still think the idea of broken window. So, there's a part of the broken windows idea where it's basically you go to communities where there's crime and stuff like that. I still think that is obviously the way you should go. That's just like a fundamental. But sweating the small stuff so much, yeah, I can see that being a good argument to just be like, hey, maybe cool it on that kind of shit because there's more serious things to be worried about,
That I'll have to Google, but it's there. It's there.
Okay, hold on.
2010 and 2013. You can.
But y'all
Okay,
have
Google pull it up
to.
then.
Okay,
I'd like to
you
see it as
have
well
to-
anyway.
Okay, okay.
I
I
didn't
just
hear
want to
what?
point this out real quick. It's a very quick point. Okay, law enforcement slowdowns are not the same as basically like we're never responding to anything ever. Of course, law enforcement officers don't let robberies and fucking murders and rapes go without a strong response time during those fucking things. What they do.
Hey,
Not
you,
sure
you
about
guys
that.
gotta let him finish. You guys gotta let him finish. I gotta give him space because apparently the other
there's
people on his side cucked me and they decided not to show up, which I'm kind of pissed at. But
Okay, hold on. No, because y'all just
He's
went
scared of the
when I said what I said. So I just want to ask you straight up. So you think that American law enforcement officers, when they're sitting in their patrol cars, or if they're sitting on a fucking street corner and they hear that somebody is being fucking murdered or raped or robbed a fucking block away from them, they say to themselves, "Well, fuck them. It's slowdown time. I'm just going to let a member of the community get raped, robbed, and murdered." That's what you're saying to me right now with your response.
I mean, there have been incidents where it's happened.
That was
so I mean, we can
that's
talk about-
happened.
We can talk about.
You can probably cherry pick a few incidents where people have been like that, but I'm guessing that Connor is basically correct. They're not like it was a 3 to 6% drop in the major crimes. So it's not like it was like a huge number.
You can talk
Okay,
about Chaz
I
and
think the raw numbers were around like 40 less. But like I don't think people were I don't think people were actively not doing that. But it could just be that there was less police to even respond to these things during the slowdown. So
their refusal to like
Okay, then
their
at this
refusal
point,
to
you're
like
like,
provide medical
you-
assistance for a man dying in the fucking street. Yeah,
no, don't fucking twist it to something different.
I'm not
That is
twisting it,
different.
motherfucker. I'm talking about
Yes,
how
you are.
police
You absolutely
police
are.
sat outside of the Chaz and blocked ambulances from coming in rather than attending the scene of the crime.
Why? I'm just going to follow you down your rabbit hole. Why do you think they did that?
Why do I think they did that? Because
Yep.
they were mad
me
at the
through it.
people who were protesting and saying that they didn't want any police. That's why.
And why do you think EMS or fire department are not allowed in unless police are allowed in first?
The police were allowed in, dude.
What are you talking about?
The dude was brought to the edge of the fucking to the edge of the zone. The police fucking blocked the ambulances from getting to him.
Okay, listen.
I don't know what do you. That's one example. I'm sure fucking Paradigm might have others.
was it because there was a shooter there? I think I remember this. They couldn't get through because there was a. Oh no, that was it. They couldn't. The fire people wouldn't go through because the police weren't there, and there was a shooter there or something like that. I can't remember exactly this. Oh shit! Have I frozen? Oh shit!
I got
I think I just froze on the stream there. Okay, no, we're back.
plenty
One
of
I
this.
recall.
Like
Okay.
I've lived through this,
No,
so it's
no.
like
Okay, no. See, this is where you're like ascribing the people that you're talking about are no longer human in your worldview. They don't have empathy. They don't have sympathy. They're not trying to do their jobs. They're not trying to uphold ideals. They're not trying to serve a broader level of the community. They're just inhuman fucking monsters that want a fucking
A
paycheck.
lot of
so they
a
can
lot of them do
brutalize the
seem to be
community.
that way. Yeah.
Okay,
Says a lot.
I would basically say
Power
that
corrupts.
y'all have had negative experiences with law enforcement officers, which absolutely fucking happens, and y'all are part of brutalized fucking communities who have a fucking narrative about what law enforcement is and does. But that doesn't mean that your narrative is accurate to.
Oh,
even
I'm
a
sure
majority
they
of law
do.
enforcement
I'm sure they do great things for Becky and Tom when they see a black guy on their lawn.
Yeah, can
But,
we at
like,
least admit that they're doing
fucking-
great things for white people? Can we at least admit that?
Sorry, what do you
Can we
think
at
Becky
least-
and Tom?
It's what
yeah,
the
can
route
we
you want to
just-
go, Connor? Like,
Can we just admit that they're doing great things for white people? Can we just admit that?
For
No.
some white people, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
yo, that's
For
the other
Becky and
part too.
They're actually doing good things for black people. People are having their children killed in broad daylight by gang shootouts and stuff like that, getting caught in the crossfire and stuff. These people also deserve justice. But of course, somebody like the Vivian doesn't give a single solitary fuck about any of that shit. All she cares about is when the odd time that a police officer does something wrong. Even though the gang shit situation, what I've just been talking about, literally is happening on a daily basis, on a very regular basis, far more than the police incidents are. And even a lot of people are even getting off with it. If you followed some of these drill rappers who have clearly been part of some of these violent killings and stuff, because of lack of evidence, they're getting off with it. And then walking the streets again to kill more. It's crazy.
For
But
middle
Becky and
class
Tom
and
living
upper
in
middle class
fucking-
white people.
living in
Oh.
fucking suburbia. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. I'm sure they do some real nice things for them. They keep
Okay.
those spooky minorities away.
Okay, all right. So we understand that law enforcement can serve a deterrence process. They can serve medical processes. They can assist with first response. They're just not responding appropriately to the communities that y'all are a part of, and you resent them for it.
Not, I mean, what I was talking about, getting some black guy off your fucking lawn, is not responding appropriately to a fucking situation. It's simply, hey man, Becky's in tears. Fucking arrest and beat up this black dude now. You know, like, yes,
but
police
y'all
can
are so
police can
disconnected.
do
You're
good things
so-
for people.
But-
If
but
that's
this
what you're
is-
trying to, if that's
hold
what
on,
you're trying to
this
get
is
me to
where-
admit, some
Okay, but
police
this is
have
where-
done and can do good things for people.
Okay, but this is where this is completely disconnected from reality. Okay? there are different. I'll just share this with you. Please indulge me for the next 2 minutes of your time. Okay. There are several ways to patrol a community, and I agree with you that some of these are super negative, super toxic, and horrible for the community. Okay. So I'll give you what I think is the bad example, and then I'll give you the good example. Mix. This is gonna be a multi-part story, so please don't interrupt me in the first section.
I'm not
okay?
fucking interrupting. I'm getting comfortable in my chair so that I can relax.
It's just happened a
while
couple
I
of
listen.
times. It's just happened a couple of times. All right.
Focus.
So the first example, I don't like to fuck with black people to ruin their days. It does not make me happy. It doesn't give me an erection. I get no emotional satisfaction out of it. My wife doesn't applaud me when I get home for fucking with black people.
Is that why you quit being a cop?
Yeah, probably. So
I'm sorry, man. You are asking for it. Carry on.
Let him go. Let him go. Look, just real quick.
into the
I will interrupt you real quick to say I know a lot of you are yelling that this is a 2v1. This is a 2v1. This is a 2v1.
I love
Motherfucker, I've sat here through
It's fine.
3v1s, 4v1s, 5v1s.
Counterpoints is
Counterpoints
perfectly
can handle it.
capable.
He's
He's
a
a grown
seasoned
adult man,
debater,
and
I
he can
think.
handle his shit. If he has trouble, I can bring in someone else. But for now,
I'm being very charitable and chill right now, all right?
And I am white and straight, so I should be able to handle one black man and one sexual minority. We will be okay. So, anyways, the point being,
okay, my monetization is Zoom. Okay, go ahead. Go for it.
So, all right. So the way that I patrolled, the way that I like patrolling, the way that I think is the correct way to patrol, is that there was a rougher area of town. There's no other way to say it. It's just rougher area of town, disproportionately black, disproportionately poor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I did from, I would say, 9 p.m. till 3 a.m., if I did not have a call, I would drive on the same 5 or 6 streets over and over and over and over again. And when I'm saying over and over, I'm literally talking about hours hitting the same 5 blocks over and over again. And these were the blocks where people were getting burglarized and people were getting murdered. And the reason why I hit that, and the reason why I hit it as hard as I did, is because I knew that as long as I was in the community, the chances of a homicide happening were significantly reduced. And also, if there was a homicide or a murder or a stabbing or a burglary that did occur, I would have a less than 1 minute response time. And on top of that, the people who were likely to commit the crimes, they saw me, so they knew that I would have a 1 minute response time to whatever shady shit was going on. As a result, typically, when I was able to do that and I did not have other calls that pulled me out of my zone, I did not have homicides and I did not have burglaries, and the day shift fucking loved me because I was basically doing my job and people didn't get burglarized overnight, okay? That is law enforcement. That is serving as a deterrent. That is bad guys saying, there's the guy with a gun.
Beautiful point by Connor. Beautiful point.
Over there who has arrest powers. I don't want to do bad shit because I'm going to get fucked up tonight if I do that shit. That's the way the job I think it should be done. Now, there's a different kind of cop who unfortunately is statistically incentivized through our current system, where I think that there is room for concern and room for reform, where it's basically a drug cop. He's a SWAT cop. He's a tactical bro. He's a stats bro. And instead of patrolling the same streets over and over and over again, what he would do is walk up to a member of the community that he knows has drugs on his person, jam his hands in his pockets and say, hey, bro, do you mind if I search you? And while the guy doesn't even have time to object, he finds a rock of fucking crack or a little bit of meth or a little bit of fucking weed, and then he takes that person to fucking jail. And while that person is in the jail cell getting processed for basically a crime that wasn't going to affect anybody, it was a homeless guy who was going to go find his little corner and consume a little bit of drugs. What ends up happening instead is, since that cop is out of his zone and the entire department is stretched thin, somebody gets killed in that fucking zone that night because the cop is no longer there, which then further justifies law enforcement response in that area. So the worse a community does, the better law enforcement does, because they can justify their presence through increase in crime stats. So I will concede to you that this is statistically perverse, that plenty of law enforcement officers do the wrong thing by incentivizing bullshit tiny crimes, but I'm not going to tell you that the entire institution doesn't serve a purpose.
Oh,
Beautiful. Beautiful and well said. I applaud you, Mr. Counterpoints.
hey, now that makes sense.
Paradigm first.
That makes sense. Okay. Now you've reached a point where I think I can see where you're coming from. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but I might say something here that's just going to make everybody's point mute. It sounds like you did a lot of great work. And I'm not gonna knock that because humans don't get their work knocked, so don't take this as a knock towards that. But it feels like you as a human being had more compassion and empathy than the system that employs you.
Sure.
Because
how is a system supposed to have empathy, though? I'm not really sure. Anyway.
Okay, so sure. So at this point, all that's going to happen here back and forth is that I'm going to tell you that the presence of cops has ruined my neighborhood by that perpetual cycle. And at the same time, having them there won't bring us back up out of it.
We've got a technical difference.
Because once you, and this is a conversation that Black people have a lot, once we all act right and learn our positions, they're still going to pick on us. They still want to justify their $6 million budget.
If that is true, then all their arguments would be more correct. But it's not. That is not true as it stands today, right?
Now, in a town like Friendstar, Iowa, sure. Like, you know, as a rash of serial killings, we need police to get down onto the top of it. FBI comes, yo, this is our jurisdiction now. Leave, blah, 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 whatever. The system will work the way it works, and hopefully they catch the killer. But for, like, petty crimes, grand larceny, like the smallest of individual like tracks in which we think about how police interact with people, the majority of the people just want to be left alone and do not cause harm to others. Now, this goes into a whole other level about drug trafficking.
Well, so people are meant to just like tolerate like their windows getting broken or like their car getting robbed or whatever the fuck, like, and police aren't just not allowed to get involved in that. Like
trafficking and neighborhood substance abuse use, and you know, we could swing it all the way back to the 70s with crack and Reagan. Okay. We could do all of the stuff, but what we end up with is I'm going to tell you that police are a negative factor in my life, not because of the interactions that I've had. That sure helps, but because of the interactions the people I interact with have had. To the point where nobody wants to call the police in any scenario.
Before we go on, just a couple things. Thank you for the $5, Fondue. Thank you for the $10, Muda Agarwal. Thank you for the sub, Inception Otter. Gang, if you want to support the channel, if you like this, right? Support community paneling. Okay, community paneling with Wick by donating and subbing to the channel, throwing bits, throwing super chats. I love you all. Appreciate it. I want to give Viv a chance to respond as well if she'd like, but then I have a question for the audience, for all of you. So go ahead.
So what I had is like, I'm a good cop, and this is how I think copping should go. Okay, I should cop like this. Okay, yeah. And you say you have like the figures to back up that there's that having that police presence helps reduce the.
Yeah, let's actually look at this right now, just so that we can actually get this point nailed down, because it is true. Does police presence deter crime? Indeed, 62 out of 78 studies included in the review reported that crime fell in the locations targeted for police presence and activity relative to other locations that were not targeted. I mean, that does come from the College of Policing, so maybe that could be bias. But they did include studies that didn't find that. So, you know, it does seem like maybe they did do a fairly robust review of the literature there. You know, that's a fairly decent amount. That's like 16 studies that did not, you know, correlate with what they thought, had opposing views or whatever. But yeah, no, there's been, as you can see, loads of studies from all over the world about this, and it does seem to be that it does reduce
crime in the neighborhood, right? That's entirely possible. I'm not even going to fucking bother contesting you on that, because I don't know, I used to shoplift a hell of a lot of shit, but if I saw a whole bunch of security guards in the store, I'm not going to fucking shoplift anything because I don't want to go to jail that day. All right. But like, but when we talk about like how police function like on a wider scale,
isn't it interesting that the person that used to shoplift all the time wants to abolish police. That's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, Paradigm already hit on some of it, right? But also, there's all those situations in which you absolutely do not want police to be involved. In the case of them, for one, like carrying out unjust laws, like I said about the fucking Florida trans kidnap bullshit, right? Two, when you're attempting to protest in any fucking capacity whatsoever, it's the police that are going to come down and fucking in the United States tear gas you, in the United Kingdom beat the fuck out of you with batons, whatever, right? There are so
Yeah, but they only do that when it gets like crazy. And it's not like other countries are fucking. They'll just start shooting, man. There are some countries where the police, like, if you're part of like a riot or a whatever, they'll literally just start unloading on the crowd. Like, it's not tear gas, it's not any of that shit. It's full on bullets. People are getting like straight up murdered. Like, the police in America rarely do that in riot situations, at least in this day and age, anyway. And same in the UK, they don't really like do that kind of thing. People don't like usually die, and usually in riots in the US, when people are dying, it's not because of the police, it's because of the rioters, like the violence that's going on. People trying to protect their businesses and things like that.
So many fucking situations in which we simply do not need police. If the role was simply, I'm going to drive around this neighborhood and I can intervene if I see somebody engaged in some sort of violent crime or trying to commit a burglary or something, right? You have to be fucking careful with that shit too, because enough black dudes have been shot trying to get into their own house when they forgot their fucking key. But, like,
How many? How many? I don't think it's that many. Actually, I don't think that's happened that many times. And it's horrible that if it has happened, by the way, absolutely horrible. But like, that's a question of holding those police, or when those incidents happen, those people to account. It's not about abolishing the police because of this.
If that was all,
because of these like few sporadic rare instances of horrible things happening,
the entire function of the police, then we'd be having an entirely different fucking conversation, right? And it's not just about that. It's also about the accountability for when things go wrong. When you do see somebody you
see, this side of the argument I'm fine with.
Think is trying to break into a fucking house, and it turns out to be some black dude who's left his key, and you just fucking you beat the crap out of him and take him to a fucking jail cell. That there's so little fucking accountability for that, right?
That's going to be a lot of people's excuse, though, isn't it? Right? If they get caught burgling, they're going to be like, "Oh no, I just live here, man." Like, I'm sure there's times where it is legitimate, because like I've been locked out of my house before and had to break into it. So I'm sure there's actually plenty of times where it can be a legitimate thing. But I'm also sure that like a lot of burglars would use that as an excuse, right? So it makes it a little difficult.
It's very, very difficult to get the to get. You can't get the time back that you spend in a fucking jail cell. You can't get that fucking cop fired, like, and that enables really harmful, scary fucking shit, like the LA sheriff's gangs, right? Because there is that culture of the police consistently protecting each other, so they can get away with more and more and more heinous shit. The police are above the law because they are the law.
So we got to take shit one thing at a time, and what we're also talking about, which I don't think you guys are going to disagree with, is we're talking about like structural issues. And I think structural issues can be addressed, and they can be addressed with good policy. So for instance, like if we look at the Portuguese model on like drug consumption and all that kind of shit, where they basically like decrimmed most like possession levels of drugs, and then they focused on traffickers. If they statistically showed that they reduced crime, cops were more focused on different things, et cetera, then I have no fucking problems with that. I'm for whatever is efficacious. And then also what I would say is, you would be surprised if part of your indictment, which I heard, is that cops are doing too much shit that has nothing to do with deterring, preventing, or solving crime. I think most cops would agree with you. And so if you approach them and you say, you're pieces of shit, You have no positive impact on the community. You make things worse. You need to be defunded. We're going to slash 30% of your fucking budget and all that kind of shit. You're basically starting from a no-go negotiation. And I'm not just talking about political optics. I'm also talking about policy structure. Whereas if you approach the current institutions, the current municipalities, counties, and all that kind of stuff, and you say, hey, listen, we appreciate the hard work that you guys are doing, but we think there's a few things that are fucked up with the system. Look at this example, look at this example, look at this example. We think that instead, here is a different way to manage the municipality in which we have this peer-reviewed fucking study that shows that we can reduce crime by XYZ% if we invest in this different social structure, and it's going to require this funding, which I know your cops are not going to want to give up any money, so how about we cut it out of a future budget instead of what you're currently doing right now? That's an infinitely easier conversation. And on top of that, final point, police administrators, union folks, captains and lieutenants and admin officers and chiefs of police and city commissioners, they might have a problem with that, but you won't have a problem with the patrolman. The patrolman will not give a fuck, because if you tell a patrolman, I will get you a social worker who is going to take all of the psychiatric calls so you don't have to fistfight people who are throwing their shit at people. Instead, we're going to send a hippie in fucking Birkenstocks to go talk to him for 20 minutes. And they'll call you and say, I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up. Then basically you would actually sell that to law enforcement.
I mean, you don't have to disparage mental health care workers. I mean, they have to have
We've been
training.
disparaging law enforcement for hours. Come on.
Well, I mean, they do work for an institution that murders more people than pretty much anybody else in America. So,
except for like drug organizations, crime organizations, all that kind of stuff. But sure, yeah, whatever. You know.
Okay. I have a question. I have a question.
And if you were, and if they are ordered, right, by their higher ups to go and break down that fucking protest, even if that protest is freely fucking enacting their free speech rights, right, within the context of the law, right, then those police are going to go in and they're going to fucking break people up and they're going to arrest them.
Because they want a chance to beat up fucking hippies. Like, what do you want? Angels? They don't exist.
Okay.
I'm saying it don't matter what fucking cop it is. They're all going to do that, right? If you're still a cop in Florida, that means you have agreed to kidnap fucking children from their family, right? This is why people say ACAB, right? And it's not to convince the fucking cops. It's to convince. It's a slogan that helps to dissipate the idea that cops are your fucking friends, right? When you're an activist, when you're engaged in the fucking community, when you want to protest, when you want to do fucking anything, the idea that cops are your friends is fucking stupid. Here in the United Kingdom, wait, just one last thing, Vic.
Please.
Here in the United Kingdom, right, we just had protests against the coronation of the new king, okay? I know, stupid fucking country, we still have a king. Okay?
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant based Republicans doing protests, my bad.
Yeah, right? And so there's a group called Republic, okay? Very liberal Republican group, right? Not Republican in the US sense, Republican in the anti-monarchy UK sense, right? Very liberal Republican group. And they decided what they were going to do was make sure, because we've got ever more oppressive anti-protest laws coming in, they wanted to make sure that they liaised with police to make sure that everything that they planned and everything that they were doing would be legal, right? So that they would be able to carry on with their protest. Now, they liaised with police for fucking months before this happened, told them when they were going to protest, where they were going to protest, how they were going to protest, and when they showed up to protest on the day, the police arrested their fucking leaders immediately, took all of their fucking signs, and fucking scuppered their ability to protest. So that's what ACAB is for,
the monarchy.
to convince fucking idiots like Republic that they shouldn't be doing that shit because it fucked them.
Okay. A couple questions for all of you, right? I'll start with this. To Paradigm and Vivian, right? We have engaged with me in this hypothetical. We have gotten to a world where we've done the things. Crime has been reduced through measures to reduce poverty and things like that. We've abolished the police. What is to keep organized groups of individuals from banding together and creating their own violent, oppressive forces to basically run rampant, right? Like, how is the community police go? Like,
What's to stop them from doing it now?
The police are. The police are more powerful and they will break them up.
Do they?
Not always, not as much as they should. But do you think it will be less or more of those if we take away the police as it stands today?
I think if we
For
address
if right-wing militias
I
and
think
things like that didn't have to worry about the
from
FBI, if right-wing militias and groups such as Proud Boys,
yes, I know you're trying to appeal to me, but like as I said at the very beginning of this fucking conversation, if we address those root causes of crime and gangs and so on, right, then there will be much less need for much less need to quote unquote police them, right? Because there will be less of them.
Yeah, but less still...
We don't disagree with this.
Yeah, like
Nobody-
less doesn't mean
nobody here is saying
right?
Get rid of the police and
So
nothing
even
else.
if you have, instead of 300 militias that are
Your
going
question
around,
assumes,
you only have 100, you still need some sort of police force to combat that 100. No?
Yeah.
Your question assumed, right, that it's get rid of the police and nothing else changes, right? I already said very early on in this conversation that like sure, you are still going to need like someone to deal with serious violent crime, right? You're still going to need something, some kind of institution to deal with violent.
I guess that's what I'm...
So how does this square up with Vivian's idea about fucking anarchism? I don't fucking understand this person.
That's what I'm trying to get at. What is that thing?
That institution is going to look a hell of a lot different than the police does today. And we've just been talking about the ways in
what meaningful
which
way,
we think
though?
that the policing could be stripped down, right? Like the police force that me and Connor might just have got round to envisioning is one that like where Connor just drives around the block repeatedly and has the power to stop somebody if they're engaged in some kind of violent activity. That is very, very different from the fucking police force that you have today in ways that Connor already explained. So like I don't understand why you're asking this question, because I feel like it's already been answered by the conversation that we've had.
But can I just answer it because I'm a misogynist and I love talking over gender non-conforming people. So basically, like here's the thing. So I think that Mix Vivian Wolf envisions optimizing the system and to a point that law enforcement as it currently exists, a person in a blue uniform wearing a tin on their shoulder and a gun on their hip is no longer required by society. I don't think that's possible. Okay, I don't. But at the same time, I think that if cops were sitting around on their asses with nothing to do, like I literally think there's like reports of Japanese cops, they're like creating shit to do because they're so fucking bored because they have nothing to police. Like that's an ideal society where your police officers are bored. So if we need to push that way by getting better education, better food programs, better this, better that, better access to opportunity, eliminating food deserts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm sure we can design a hyper-utilitarian society that reduces law enforcement.
I don't think anyone's
against that. What happens to the stat whores that you mentioned earlier? The guys who want to get the most arrests and shit. Like they're not going to sit on their ass
and die. I don't give a shit about them. They're fucking douchebags.
But they're not going to sit on their ass bored. They're going to go out and find crime, right?
True. No, they will. Okay, they will. But at the same time, like having that guy run around, jam his pockets into some fucking junkie's jam his hands into some junkie's pockets, take that person to jail, waste that person's days for 2 days or 3 days, and then a homicide resulting because that law enforcement officer is no longer present. That is the current paradigm. Whereas if we did the utilitarian optimization that we're talking about, and also if we change laws, so law enforcement is going to do what they're told to do. That's what they're going to do. So if you decrim fucking possession of drugs, he can no longer use a junkie as an excuse to get off the road for 2 hours 100%. Or 3 hours so he can do paperwork and waste the court's time. I am perfectly okay with fucking that guy over because fuck that guy.
But that guy is like a lot of fucking police officers, right? You said yourself that
I would say it's like.
But now we're talking about her theoretical ideas about how this could all look and stuff. So he's saying that like, she's like, oh, but there's all these corrupt police officers. It's like, well, if the laws aren't there for them to even pursue that, so they can't even do it in the first place. So otherwise, that would be like an infringement of their duty. So why would it even be a problem then?
would say it's easily 10%. Easily 10% of the population are stat hounds, SWAT officers who don't care about the people they're policing. They just care about getting pretty little
10%
statistics.
might be underestimated, but
That's
like,
fine. I don't think a lot of these people are competent to be who I'm talking about.
I want to toss it to.
You said the system incentivizes this kind of behavior, right? So what, like,
Sure, change the system.
okay, so what about the system incentivizes this kind of behavior?
The drug war is number one. Like that's it. So if you like, marijuana should be medicinal or recreational. Okay, let's just start there. Okay. Then when we're talking about the harder drugs or whatever, when we're talking about meth, coke, et cetera, I think that possession quantities, anything under 3 grams or something like that, that should be like it should be either a criminal or a civil citation. Here, pay the court $50 or $100. Here's a reference for fucking rehab, and go fuck yourself. And maybe after your 10th arrest for minor possession, we'll
This
take
is where your view is too narrow, right? Where it doesn't encompass what I'm saying. Okay, so
I think that'd be a huge improvement for the American system personally, and it would take so much pressure off the police, especially if they had discretion for stuff like decriminalized drugs, like, so whatever the fucking amount is that they decide on, it's like the limit. Anything below that kind of thing, they could just literally just say, just stop doing it here, or give it to me, or whatever. But they don't have to arrest them, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like a criminal proceeding. They can just have discretion to be like, okay, and then just write a little thing just saying, took some coke off this guy, we'll put it in, whatever the fuck, we'll put it in whatever evidence or whatever the fuck to be destroyed. I don't know, whatever the fuck they want to do with it.
you're on the right track.
But like, I think that would actually be pretty broad, sweeping changes to how it works today, and it would actually help a lot. I think it would help a shitload.
Right? This isn't like me
Again, you don't have to abolish police to achieve these things.
having a go at you or whatever. But you say basically decriminalize to a certain extent drugs for personal use, right? Maybe you give him a fine. Maybe you give him a thing to like tell them to attend rehab or whatever, right? What the abolitionist says is not like give this person a fine and order them to attend the equivalent of AA meetings for drugs or whatever, right? But make sure that we have in our communities like needle clinics, safe places for people to fucking shoot up, good resources for people who want to fucking get off, right? Other social services engaging with drug users to make sure that they have things like housing and mental health care to make it easier for them to get off drugs.
Okay, I view myself as the conservative.
I do want to get Paradigm in here at some point, right? So finish your point, and then I want to toss it to Paradigm.
So I view myself as the conservative or libertarian whisperer. Okay, I'm probably pretty centrist. I'm probably more left wing than a lot of rightoids. But I like to couch things because I feel like I had a right wing upbringing. I like to couch things in their language because I think some of these things are sellable to the right. So when you say needle clinics, or needle exchanges, what I think is basically you're going to create drug corners by taking a bunch of clean needles down to homeless people and all that kind of stuff. You're basically going to recreate Skid Row. That's not what I want to do. I don't want perverse incentive policy that basically fucks over the community, no matter how well intentioned. However, what's actually really interesting was I read that like Switzerland gave people heroin, and I was like, what the fuck is this Euro trash fucking incentive bullshit? Well, what actually ended up happening was I watched a documentary on their program. Their program is basically you can go to a clinic and they have doctors that will evaluate your needs case. They will wean you off of the drug and give you just enough of the drug within the quantities required in order to stave off your addiction. And they will help place you with like education and addiction counseling. So hopefully you can wean yourself off of the drug and then reincorporate yourself into society.
And this is in part what I'm talking about, right? Sure.
But you got to be specific, because if we're talking about like, let's just go down to Skid Row and hand out needles,
Again, the practicalities of getting to the place that I want to be at, right? I'm going to be opposed all the fucking way by conservatives, and you can talk to me all you like about how to sell this to conservatives, how to incrementalize it so that it can get passed in policy and shit, right? That's all very interesting, all very valuable, but but it's a different conversation than whether we should have this done, whether we should do this at all.
What goals
It
she would
seems to me
work
we
for?
mostly kind of agree that we should be doing most of these things.
Okay.
I mean,
I
if you're
wanna-
advocating for the Switzerland model in
So,
regards
so
to
sorry, Wick,
yeah.
I can do this in 10 seconds. Libertarians on the right will want to reduce state power. So basically, if you come to them and you say, I think using X, Y, Z, whatever, we can reduce the amount of people who are getting the shit kicked out of them by the state, you can sell that to a healthy chunk of the right wing.
Paradigm.
That is an important thing to be able to do as well. I feel like lefties like the Vivian, she's actually kind of being quite open-minded in this discussion, like more so than I've seen her in other times. But like she's still kind of like holding on to this like my way or the highway kind of thing. She's like kind of a bit hesitant to really give him that point, you know what I mean? It's annoying.
I hate to bring it to this direction, but I don't in the same way because, okay, just to put it simply, we had this conversation in the 60s, we had this conversation in the 70s, we had it in the 80s, we had it in the 90s, we had it in 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013, 2015, 2017,
Just make your fucking
2019,
point, mate.
and then the big one, Black Lives Matter,
But
2020.
not on a WIC panel? WIC panels are within
I give you that one. I give you that one. I give you that one. It's repeating the same things that we were decrying for before. The reason why it's gotten to a point where I say ACAB and it would just be easier for me to dissolve the police system as a whole and try to replace it from there is because all of these ideas that you're saying are really awesome. And I want to make it clear to everyone who's listening. There are two people on the opposite side here of me who are agreeing that, like, at its core, there are rotten elements of the police force, the state arm of law enforcement, that are issues that cause more issues, that cause a cascading scale of issues. We are way past the point where if any of these ideas were worthy enough, people would have brought it up in the legislation.
No. That's not how the politics works, man. The Democrats and the Republicans largely do not have an interest in this because the Democrats profit off of racism and so do the right wing. The right wing are teaching white people to hate minorities. The left wing media companies are teaching the minorities to hate the white people. It's really plain as day. And like a lot of these media companies are wings of these political parties. They're kind of in bed with them a lot of times. So it's just like, it's just really, I don't know. I feel like this is a stupid point.
That's the problem here. Is
I mean,
that
I agree
his
with
point?
you. I don't,
are issues that cause more issues that cause a cascading scale of issues.
What was his point again?
We are way past the point where if any of these ideas were worthy enough, people would have brought it up in the legislation. That's the
Oh yeah, and this is the point I was trying to make, is that like they're not going to bring it up in the legislation because it's not profitable for them to do that. They're not going to have control. They want to keep minorities dependent. They don't want people to be independent and stuff like that. So this is why they've kind of made it as it is, and this is why they don't like actually focus on policy that it would actually change things. Because it's not in their interest to do that. Trump, I don't know if he would actually do that or not. I'm honestly not sure, but he represented an outsider. Like, he threatened that whole system because he was not about the war machine, and he was about trying to sort out crime. But I don't think he was completely like closed off to ideas of like increasing education stuff like that. He did give a lot of money to the black colleges and all that stuff, didn't he? So I think he does value education. But I couldn't make a strong prediction on whether or not he would actually go about doing that or not. But whether or not he would, he's like the only person out there who threatened their system. Most other people are not threatening their system in this way because it's not profitable for them to do that. Trump didn't have to be aligned with their shit. He was his own thing. So that is why he was so scary to them. That's why they went so hard against him. Harder than anyone else they've ever gone against. Remember, Republicans and Democrats were both against him. Remember that. And there's a reason for that. They showed their true face for a moment there. You have to really remember that. And then they realized they needed to put the facade back on again. That's when people aligned with him, blah, blah, blah. But then they all ousted him in the end anyway. Probably rightly so, by the way. I'm not trying to stick up for Trump, but like I'm just observing what is going on. You know,
The problem here is
I mean,
that
I agree with you. I don't think we
We-
are on opposite sides. I'm just trying to have a conversation at Connor's fucking level
Do we?
and try and work out where the bits are that we fucking agree.
No, I
Okay,
have
okay,
a
fair
question
enough.
for you,
I
Paradigm.
don't
Paradigm,
agree with-
do you
hold on.
think-
Yeah,
like
yeah.
some of the only people involved in the legislature that I can think of, it's like senators and like House representatives and stuff like that vote on these policies, whatnot. The only one I can think of bringing this kind of stuff to the table is someone like Dan Crenshaw, maybe. Even he's gone a bit weird over the years. Like I'm not so sure about him anymore, but
Do you think that the
Talk for
police
like
in the
50
60s
hours. Can I get?
Before you came on, I decided to not be as antagonistic and remove the fucking picture of the burning cop car with ACAB.
Damn! No, I wanted to see that.
Okay?
No.
You can put it up. I just had my second kid.
but-
I'm in a very relaxed mood.
But I'm gonna get in on this a little bit. Paradigm, do you think that
Talk
the
to me.
policing in the 60s and the 70s was the same as it is today? Do you not think we've improved immensely when it comes to policing in the United States? Like just from a statistics perspective, right?
I
Like,
don't
we have
think it's
much
statistics when
less
it comes to
deaths.
human lives. That's it. That's just it. Like the same way I made this argument about marijuana being legal, but black people still being trained to hide it when they see police cars coming around. You've already done the effect. You've already built that same effect. While police aren't hosing people down, they were during the protests. You see what I mean? It's like the balance going forward isn't the same as the balance
You don't
going
think we could
backward.
change that though? You don't think that by over time, right? Having better police in place, like having better stats. Like I know you don't like to think it's stats, but most people do, and this is how we measure these things, right? Do you not think that over time we can turn it into being these effects eventually will be mitigated or reduced to an acceptable level, or
It shouldn't be a level. Doctors who kill a patient by accident one time get disbarred. See what I mean?
no, they don't. They always say that like when you go into surgery, there's a possibility this could go wrong, and this is just how it is. Like, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's going to be fine. But there is a small chance that like there could be something wrong with it, and like that's the risk you take when you go in for surgery and shit like that. Like they can't like, and sometimes people might die when they're doing very sensitive kinds of things like brain surgery or heart surgery and whatever, lung surgery. Like they could very well kill somebody. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily their fault. Things can just there can be complications and people can just die from this stuff. Or even in just emergency from like wounds and stuff like that as well.
Wrong. No. Okay, so this is where I disagree. Okay, no, I think that over the past 70 or 80 years, there's been like marked improvements in like law enforcement quality, the way they interact with the community, whether or not you can be racist,
yeah,
whether
we
or not.
don't abolish hospitals.
This is true as well. Like this is definitely true. The police, you could definitely make more of the argument about the police brutality stuff in the 70s and 80s. It was getting out of hand at that point. With that kind of stuff. So like I totally feel the argument from that perspective. And he is kind of right. This fella in the top right, I don't know what his name is, but like he is right in that there's like a kind of effect that has been created over time, like this mistrust of the police because of that legacy from the past. The issue is that people aren't willing to see what is actually going on now. They're seeing grievances happen now, things happen and thinking that the scale is still the same as it used to be, but it's not. So
Just because one
Well,
surgeon killed.
I don't
someone.
think that's
and
what
not just
anybody's saying here.
Well, hold on, and not just that, but the medical malpractice thing isn't totally accurate either, because I'm pretty sure like medical malpractice is like besides accidents, cancer, and heart disease, I think that's like the next leading cause of death. So there's plenty of like, medical accidents that happen all the fucking time and we don't give a shit because basically it's just part of the system and it's not intentional. It's not malevolent. So I understand that like intentional and either negligence or malevolence. I would say malevolently, The system was designed maybe 50 or 60 years ago to disproportionately fuck over black people. And then now we're just kind of dealing with the consequences of that. But if you want to have minority communities inside the United States do well, obviously the thing is going to be to try to get the system to an ideal function as quickly as possible. And then hopefully over like 500 or 1,000 years, we can address your fucking intergenerational trauma. But I don't think that we're going to be able to solve intergenerational trauma in 10 or even 100 years.
No, I don't believe that. I think that's a lot. Like the intergenerational trauma from World War II has, I don't know, is it even there? I'm not exactly sure. That wasn't that long ago. So I don't know about that, but I think people could get past the intergenerational trauma within a few generations. To be frank, I think it's already happening actually, but you know, whatever.
You Paradigm.
I'm thinking. Okay, that is just the. I don't have a response to
Portland,
that.
get
I will
backstage.
concede
Stop
that.
yelling
I
in
will.
chat. Get backstage. Hold on.
I will.
Portland,
I
get
will.
backstage.
I will concede that point. You are right about it being the third leading cause of death in the United States. But this still leads me back to that same point. No matter how many improvements we have, there is still that fear.
So it's like airplanes could be perfected. You could have one crash a year. People are still gonna be scared to get on a plane. I mean, like, what are we supposed to do about that? We can't fucking police how people fucking think and feel about things. All we can do is tell them what is real. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
You have to address that root cause of the fear. And that fear is only going to go away if the police radically reform themselves. We start implementing all of these systems. I just don't see that happening because that would require us actually helping people in America. And now I'm specifically going at America. I think it should be ACAB specifically in America for this exact reason, that we will never end up on a point where, oh, the police are improving, they're killing less people. Like, maybe none. You know, I wish we could start at zero.
Well, how could it be zero for the police if it's not zero for the people? Like, if people are murdering and killing, how is it that the police are not also going to have to be part of that violence and thus may have to also kill or fight at some point, you know? What the fuck is he talking about, man?
Zero and restart is where I'm getting at. I want to start at zero and then see where it happens. Right now, we're at like 100 and nobody wants to bring it down.
This is Viv first, and then I'm sure you can respond to both of them, Connor. I'm sure, right?
But I mean, this is why, like, all these fucking things that I suggest, like, as policy changes and so on, right, are like I said at the start, are like decades-long fights that have been going on for fucking decades, right? Like, fucking same shit Angela Davis was fighting for in the fucking, like, early 60s, she's fighting for today, right? Like, there hasn't been that much of a fucking shift in terms of towards the things that she would like to see implemented, that I would like to see implemented, right? Which is why I, as an anarchist, advocate for attempting to do these things as best as possible, like, from the ground up. So that, like, if we're doing these things, if we're providing them for the community, if we're putting together our collective resources, if we're working together as communities to provide these things that we want, right? Social care, fucking housing, food, education, places where people can fucking do drugs, and doctors to help them get them off them, right? We have to organize as people. And we have to create institutions and organizations that are dedicated to doing this, and just say.
You're just literally describing the state right now. Like, what is this fucking idiot? So it has to be run by the people for the people. It's like, where do you think the people come from that go and work in the schools? Where do you think they come from? They are people in the world, part of the people. A lot of them come from the local area usually. Like, what? What the fuck?
Say and say fuck the police, because we don't expect the police to change anytime fucking soon.
Portland, are you here? If you're here, get in backstage, right?
That's the practical route for me, right? Which is why I don't really care.
This I'm starting to struggle with this because it's just like it feels like they're kind of going around in circles a little bit, and like some of the points they're making just aren't making sense. Like, how can you're going to set up all these institutions to do stuff? Then you're going to have governing bodies to deal with the institutions, right? So they manage themselves, or like within them. You're just recreating what you're talking about. It's just fucking stupid. And also, you can just do this anyway. Like, if you want to have community stuff, if you want to have housing and stuff like that, you can literally open up your place to people, or whatever the fuck you want to do, however you want to go about it. Put community funds together to buy land or buy misused property and do it up or something. Like, there's literally nothing stopping people from doing this kind of thing right now. You know? But they're just, they're not doing it. They rely on government to do this kind of stuff because it's outsourced. A lot of people aren't thinking about doing this shit. They're trying to look after their own families and their own lives and stuff like that. They're too busy for shit like that.
What conservatives think
Portland,
of my
if you're
fucking
not
rhetoric.
here, I'm gonna
I care
give
about
it
like
to someone
what
else.
people who are already, vaguely in the same space as I am care about it. I just want to motivate them towards fucking action.
Okay, so let's address two things simultaneously. So 80 years ago, Angela Davis was legally prohibited from being in certain fucking rooms. And I'm pretty sure 80 years ago, like, black students going into schools with white students had to be enforced at gunpoint. So I'm pretty sure that, like, we've made some progress since the 1960s. Then when it comes to
like 60 years ago, I just said
did I fuck up the math? Yeah, I fucked up the math. Anyways, it's 60 years ago.
I skip this
40
along
plus
a
20.
little bit because I don't think they're
Blacks,
really
like, we're very progressive when it comes to the races. Okay.
So you would say that the targets just changed?
No, I would say the targets are different priority. And by the way, there's plenty of fucking social conservative Hispanics and social conservative black folk in Florida. So
we'll get to that later.
That
Well,
was
okay,
a
so
question
let's-
I had on the docket, but go on, finish.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, like, we can go over the reasons why DeSantis is basically like a Trump neo-monarchist Christian nationalist or whatever the fuck. We can go over that if you want. Population and half of the Republican Party are the mustache-twirling villains that you pretend they are.
Go ahead.
I think that I have an issue mainly with the position that the abolitionist side of the panel has taken, surprisingly, because it doesn't really sound like they're abolitionists. It sounds like they're reformists. Paradigm maybe a little bit more on the abolition side of things, but it sounds like, Viv, you concede pretty immediately that we need police, we need incarceration, you just want less of it. So to me, that seems like, and you want like a more socially responsible form of it. You want social safety nets and other systems built up around it to help reduce the need for it. But you,
which would require a state, by the way,
concede that it's necessary. So that part we don't even. Like,
I don't think
we win. We win that side. Paradigm. What is your ideal?
Hey, stop one at a time. You did address her. Let her respond, and then you can address Paradigm. Okay, Vivian.
I'm gonna get some water.
So I don't think even Paradigm would deny that there are certain people who might need to be kept out of the general public, right? That, like, however they're incarcerated, I said earlier, it would have to look very, very different than it does today.
Yeah, so it's
because the carceral system in the United States,
you're not refuting his point.
Both in terms of, like, psychiatric incarceration and criminal incarceration, right? One could argue there's not really much of a difference between the two, but, like, both of them are extraordinarily substandard, right? Like,
yeah, no, I actually, Viv, the thing is, like, prescriptively, you've said nothing I disagree with. You've just labeled it as abolition. And you've basically
my position
reform.
My position is no different than fucking Mariame Kaba or Angela Davis or any of the other
Your
people.
position is very different from Angela Davis's position on police abolition and prison abolition, Viv.
No, it's
you
not.
conceded immediately that we need to have prisons and the carceral system in some form.
No, I want
outlined a bunch of reasons why
stop,
you guys made some claims about,
I just
like,
got back.
most...
Stop.
Yeah, you know, he's completely right.
Stop
telling me what is wrong with you. Stop telling me what I think, right?
I listened to you say what you think for over an hour.
Okay, well, it's fine. Obviously, you misheard, or you're fucking stupid and didn't understand. One of the two.
No. Viv's stupid and doesn't understand her own position. That's
You're fucking.
You gotta let
What I
Viv
said
finish.
was-
Stop.
Here,
You
Wally.
made
What
an
I
accusation.
said
Let Viv respond,
What I
and then
said
you can
was,
respond.
right?
She responds so
Obviously,
much.
there are some very extreme cases where people need to be kept away from the general population for everybody's safety, right? Whatever that looks like, I said, will look nothing like the carceral system of today. That's what I
describe it.
said.
Describe what the carceral system for violent criminals looks like in your ideal world that's so distinct from the carceral system we have now in the developed world that you can't even call it prison. Please describe it.
In the in the United States, well, it's not going to look like a whole bunch of people who are seriously fucked up, right, being fucking like herded into a cage with a whole bunch of other people who are seriously fucked up, right? You need to have institutions that are prepped to care for, rehabilitate, and provide for the people who are in those institutions. And if
Those are the support systems and ancillary systems, right?
And only when it is absolutely 100% necessary to separate somebody from the general population do you do so, right? That's it. So I'm talking about psychiatric
Has Viv ever actually been in any of these prisons?
hospitals that are much, much kinder, much, much better equipped.
There are thousands of people
than
per
they are
year
today.
that commit violent crimes up to and including murder that would need to be housed in a system of incarceration where they could be able to access those rehabilitative and social support mechanisms that you just described. It's just
And
prison with more
more that
words.
the more that we address the root causes of crime, right? Poverty, lack of education, lack of mental health care, etc., drug addiction, and so on, right? The faster the rate of those people is going to drop. Like I said from the very fucking beginning, the ultimate goal is that you need to incarcerate basically nobody except for like extreme edge cases who are like, I don't know, fucking serial killers who are just born wired to want to mutilate people or something.
Well, okay, what if they just kill one person? What if it's just a person who's like, driving recklessly because they're shithoused at 120 miles an hour and they run over my kids? What happens to them?
I don't know, but I don't think that putting
Okay,
them
you should be able to fucking answer that question.
No, I shouldn't.
Oh my
I don't
God.
need-
I'm loving this guy's energy right now because this is exactly how I felt this entire conversation. It's just like you're just saying a lot of bullshit, man. You don't even really It's like she doesn't understand her own position at all, or what she's saying.
to answer that
This
question,
is day one.
right?
Day one shit.
No, I don't need to answer that question.
Yes, you
Oh.
do.
Okay.
If you're advocating for fucking abolition, if you're on the side of abolition, like you need to have something.
Motherfucker.
Viv,
I was going
You
to.
don't have a
I
serious
was going
position,
to.
Vivian.
I was
You're a
going to-
reformist with
I was
extra
going
words,
to-
and most of them are smug.
okay, you
I'm
got
very-
stop.
very
Portland,
fortunate.
I'm going to mute you for a moment.
I was going to
Vivian.
answer your question, right? but
I
like,
see you both.
it's a silly question because the world that I'm talking about. Yeah, you good? So the world that I'm talking about doesn't. I mean, if you're just going to sit there giggling like a little cunt, then I won't even bother like addressing you.
Well,
I can have
turn
this
off the cat.
conversation. I
Turn
can
off
have
the
this
fucking
conversation
cat.
with
Let's
you.
see your face.
I can have
I'll
this
giggle all I
conversation
want.
with the adults in the room.
Okay.
What is, you're
Oh.
so fucking mad. Are you like just mad that I exist? Is it? Is
Oh
it
my
a
god,
anti-
Vivian is such a fucking disingenuous piece of shit sometimes. The guy's annoyed because your positions are fucking stupid and you don't understand what it is that you're actually fucking saying. And you're on the side of like prison abolition. And to be honest, I understand why people are angry about prison. People talking about prison abolition in such a cavalier way. It's because people's actual lives are on the line here. Like crime is a way bigger problem than the police brutality is, and you're just talking about it so flippantly as if having no police is going to solve everything. It's just like it's so fucking stupid. Obviously, she's got other sides to the argument as well, but like she flip flops between the two as if the two aren't related, you know.
Viv problem that you've got right now?
Can
You just fucking like
Can you
what?
just-
what
I
is
want
wrong
to
with
toss
you?
it. I want to
Okay,
stop. I want to toss it
So,
to Par-
okay,
I want
I
Viv,
don't
finish
think-
your point quick. Then I want to
Well,
toss it to
yeah,
Paradigm,
well,
and I want to toss it to
I'll
Connor.
answer his fucking questions, fine, right? So what I would say is that we need to look into the reasons why a particular individual would have got so fucking wasted and driven so fucking recklessly that they fucking ran over a kid, right? And we can address those things both on a societal level and on an individual level. Now, that person
How has everyone got time to dedicate to this one person that fucked up? Like, how has everyone in society got to, like, deal with this? What the fuck, man?
being incarcerated for the rest of their life does absolutely nothing to solve the problem of drink driving and fucking vehicular homicide, right?
Nobody said the rest of their life, Vivian.
Sorry?
Nobody said the rest of their life.
That's what you get in the United States 9 times out.
Yeah, but I'm not asking about the United States. I asked you to describe in your ideal justice system, because you have conceded that some capacity for justice is like institutionally necessary. How does
what do you mean by justice? Because currently
the segregation of the violently murderous portion of the population from the rest of the population to safeguard their health and safety?
It was a rhetorical question because, as far as I can tell, right, justice does not exist in the United States. Right? What you have is a punitive system wherein somebody makes some infraction on the law and is then punished for some arbitrary amount of time that the US courts and the fucking legal system determines is enough to pay for whatever they've done. This does not make the person who has lost their child whole. It does not help them. It does not support them.
You're dodging the question.
No, I am not dodging the question. You're asking...
Fucking dodging it hardcore, man.
No, you're asking...
You're telling me... You're giving me critiques with the current system. I'm asking you to describe yours.
You're asking fundamental questions about justice, right? And I'm talking about what justice is, right? Justice is not somebody being punished for a crime. Justice is a...
I conceded your particular version of it. I gave...
Portland, oh my god, I want to do the meta! Let me be Mr. Girl for a second, holy shit!
Just to finish the sentence, that's all.
Okay.
Justice is a redress of the situation such that you can achieve as close to balance as possible, right? To make the person who has been harmed whole and to try and prevent future occurrences of this harm occurring, right? So it would depend is the fucking answer. And I can't give you a better one than that, right? Because we're just talking about a very...
Portland, chill! Holy shit. I'm gonna come up to fucking Portland with a goddamn tranquilizer gun and fucking shoot you with fucking meth. Relax.
Because there were no cops.
Okay, we'll smoke on it.
Okay, sounds great. So, basically, this is the reason why I don't care whether or not Mixed Vivian Wolf is a perfect abolitionist. Because basically, when you talk to Mixed Vivian Wolf, forgive me right now, like when you talk to Vosh, or if you talk to Demon Mama, or if you talk to any of the Anarkitties or the Ancoms or whatever, anyone who is not 14 will basically concede that this is like a centuries or millennia long project. They don't see humans evolving into being capable of living without a state instantaneously, and they also don't see a state conceding power within like 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. So they're talking about a long-term ideal for humanity, and I don't really give a fuck, because the things that we could talk about that I think are infinitely more productive about than whether or not Mixed Vivian Wolf is the perfect anarchist is things that we could do to the system now that would actually satisfy all involved parties. So as I mentioned earlier, I think law enforcement, if you approach them like a dickhead and you say, we're going to cut 30% of your funding, fuck you, you're a piece of shit and you don't even help the community, you're not getting anywhere. Whereas if you say, hey, we want to try out these programs, we think that they're pretty effective for reducing crime, we're going to give you field social workers and they're going to take all of your mental health calls. We're expecting that to reduce the Baker Act violence in the community by 10% or 20%.
Why not?
You have less work.
Okay, I got paid to ask you a question.
Why do we care about what?
I'm going to ask a question I got paid for. Capitalism. Okay. $5 for the ACAB crowd. If sadists are attracted to becoming cops, what will happen to them when the role of cops disappear? Like for the current like
if sadists are attracted to becoming cops,
which
you know, okay, so I'm gonna chime in. I was trying to stay as that. That is the answer. That is the answer. But let's have some fun with it. Let's have some fun with it.
They join gangs. They join whatever. They become violent individuals. They, you know, most of them aren't even like that anyway. But I would say some sadists and people do gravitate. They gravitate to all kinds of different things. Police being one of them. But that kind of personality trait can manifest in so many different ways. But if one of them, like the police, just isn't there, then it would just be something else. It would just be one of the other ones.
You were paid for this question, so I'm gonna see what I could do with it. What happens? Well, that's a funny thing that you mentioned that, because kind of the issue with cops is that they're pulled more into white supremacist ideals than they are like leftist issues, and that's to be expected. You literally see the worst shit probably ever.
There's only leftist or white supremacist on the political spectrum. This guy, man, he comes out with some fucking gems, doesn't he?
Every day while you walk the beat. I'm sure Connor can attest to that. Not the worst shit ever, but like you see shit that changes you, you know, PTSD, etc. Like I can't, in any world, I'm never gonna say that like there hasn't been a moment where cops have stopped like the worst things from happening. We're not going to go in that direction, because one way or another, in my society, in my ideal world, or in his ideal world, there's still a force that's stopping somebody. Like if they cry out for help and they get assaulted, there's somebody who's like, yo, don't punch that lady, and they stop it right in the middle of the time. That's gonna, we're all gonna end up at some point where somebody's gonna be a good Samaritan somewhere.
Sure.
Or
Paradigm.
But so now to land it down to the what do you do with those people who like really want the power and now they don't have a place to like get hired for that power structure? Just look at what happens now. They'll just find another place. They'll just find another group. They'll just find another Reddit Discord.
There you go.
They'll just find a Reddit Discord.
Politics.
They'll find another Reddit page. Yeah, politics.
Yeah,
like
become
lawyers. We're gonna,
there are countries where
it's
they
like
don't
we're gonna
have,
feed
like,
into these systems.
There are countries where they don't have very readily available police, and they have things called, like, my wife's from the Philippines, and she likes to talk about a thing they have there called the barangay. It's basically a civilian militia that exists in the town to, like, deter crime and enact extrajudicial justice in the event that crimes do take place, or activities that the neighborhood considers unsavory. And I'm sure that you guys can imagine a world where the community polices itself just as badly or worse than the institutions that have things like oversight and governance, right?
Sure, that's why throughout this entire conversation, it has never been a one-pronged get rid of the police, reduce the police, defund the police, whatever, right?
I know. You've made some weirdly salient points. I'm disagreeing with you on the optics of how you've presented yourself, because it's counterproductive to what you want. But you've made nothing but like...
Miss Vivian Wolf is being pragmatic, you bitch.
I'm interested in communicating
no shit,
what I
but
think.
she's acting like she's not
I'm interested in
kind of what I took issue with.
I don't give a fuck about optics. I'm interested in communicating what I think and what I think.
Well, if you're interested in communicating what you think, why wouldn't you be open to these suggestions? Like if they're actively telling you, if they're from this side of the political spectrum that's the right one, they understand their mindset and how they're going to receive certain things, and they're saying, look, you can actually get what you want if you change how you talk about it, but it will be basically the same. You just need to work on how you're presenting this idea. Why would you even resist that? That's like a really good thing. Like they're actually helping you.
Actual material steps that we can take towards things, right? I don't actually care about what I think is an incredibly naive fucking conversation that people have with basically every political ideology, whether it be ANCOM, ANCAP, communist, fucking whatever, right? They will go, well, what is your ideal world, right? And all of these particular ideologies, liberalism, conservatism, they all have like a vague idea of some kind of utopia that they want to arrive at. But what they actually are is philosophical frameworks through which they see the world.
I don't think that's fully true. Like liberalism doesn't encapsulate necessarily a utopia, just a set of principles and rules that a society should be governed by that produces the maximum amount of liberty without doing harm, right? So like they're acknowledging that it's not going to be perfect already. Like it's about trying to find a decent thing. Like they're not trying to, like Marxists are more the type of people, or maybe Nazis are trying to find like a utopian ideal where they have a society that's run a very particular way, and it's only going to be this particular race that's going to have these particular ideals to it and stuff like that. Like liberalism has a part of that, but the ideals are about maximizing liberty rather than like a particular political framework. So it's like we're going to give you freedom of speech and freedom to bear arms and like blah 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 blah, and pursue not be held back to pursuing your career or whatever the fuck, whatever kind of business venture you want to go into, or however you want to conduct your life. Generally speaking, that's what they're trying to maximize. Is that side? That's what the ideal is for them. But they also implicitly know that that means that that's going to create a varied kind of culture. But yeah.
Ways of analyzing the problems.
Yeah, to me, that's just like, that's not like a utopia, though. It's like they acknowledge it's not a utopia, whereas like Marxists are trying to get to like a utopia of what they believe to be like this kind of perfect system.
They face and how to react to those problems in order to put to move things in the direction that they think they should move in, right? For whatever reason, from fascist to anarchist, that is what a political philosophy is. It is not the construction of a utopia.
No, okay, hold on.
I'm aware that the process of incrementalism is good.
Okay,
No,
but
I'm not talking about
come on,
incrementalism.
just super fucking based, goddammit. Just let it be based for a fucking second. Okay? No,
I agree with it.
This is actually really cool because I'm sure there's some fucking postmodern analysis or whatever that says the reality is not the ideologies that we hold up. So oftentimes what abolitionists or leftists or progressives or communists or socialists are saying, like, you have the liberal ideal of, equal justice before the law or the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. But if you look at the reality, the truth is that these ideals are not applied. And so what liberals, or like I would say capital L liberals or libertarians or Republicans or whatever, what they say is, well, we need to double or triple down on the system because basically if we double or triple down, we can better realize these ideals. Whereas a lot of people who want a completely different system say, no, let's just rip it all to shreds. And so here's the thing is like, I fucking think that ripping it all to shreds is fucking stupid because if you look at all the revolutions of the past like 500 to 1,000 years, basically the chaos immediately after a revolution is fucking horrific. And then two, I actually do think that like liberalism, as much as liberals are fucking pussies and cucks and can't articulate their fucking worldview, I think having articulated bills of rights and a republic that can articulate those rights and security institutions that enforce those rights is all fucking based. And so I think it's just it's a point of like, I am never going to want to go where Mix Vivian wants to go, where we don't even have a state anymore, because I cannot philosophically differentiate between a state and a government. I think those are the same thing. I think they're institutions that wield power over people.
Yeah, no, he's correct. They are basically the same.
So yeah.
I mean, usually the full thing is a nation state, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's where we fundamentally differ, right? And we differ in both the steps that we would take and the reason I say that I think we probably don't need a state is because a state, as I currently envision it, what you said, right, the ability to wield power over other people is something that I think that we should try our best to reduce, because wielding power over.
She was literally earlier in this discussion talking about setting up institutions of like education and even policing, like whatever form she wants to have it, it's still a form of it, and all whatever else, like to help people with like, I don't know, welfare or whatever, like community shit, social workers and stuff. That's still gonna have people in charge of it, right? I guess she's saying as least as possible. But it's not that much different, really.
For other people is the only means by which oppression can occur, right? If you get rid of the ability for one person to wield power over another, you get rid of the vector for oppression.
That's just ridiculous, though, because people will always have the ability to be violent. That is the fundamental basis of grabbing power, is like, can I beat this army? Can I maintain these borders against an outside force? You know what I mean? Like, it is like, how are you like that? That is how it fucking works. Like, how.
Aggression.
And if it's infringed on, this is why they do riots or stuff, because they're trying to like fight back or whatever, right?
Okay,
Right.
but let me
And
ask
you
this
can
question.
agree or
Just to
disagree
prove-
with that, right? But like that's why I say that I don't envision a state. It's not because I have a perfect idea in my mind of what a stateless society looks like. It's because a state is antithetical to my moral values.
Okay, but this is where I think a lot of people.
But that presupposes that there wouldn't be other power structures that would like spring up outside of a government, like big corporations like hoarding resources and then funding their own private militias or whatever the fuck. Like, there could be loads of shit that happens, like religious movements become the new order or like whatever. Like, it just doesn't. It's just a really stupid point of view. Like, if you know anything about humans and human behavior and human history, like, that's just not how it's going to happen.
People, including myself, get frustrated with the concept of anarchism or whatever, is because when we're talking about like bad actors, whether or not they're malicious or negligent or whatever the fuck, and then we talk about like enforcement of contracts, where we're talking about like people delivering goods and services at an expected time so everybody can mutually benefit from the community. When we have people who violate those contracts, we expect somebody to step in and try to make those contracts correct. And if you have a society in which you don't have any kind of authority over another person, then all you really have is the freedom to disassociate. And
I mean, essentially,
unfortunately,
all you're talking about, essentially all you're talking about is what the Earth looks like at the moment with all these different fucking nations and shit, right? It's like some nations are much stronger militarily than others, and can militarily and economically than others,
Thank
and
God.
can enforce their will upon others, right? And through collective power, you can enforce those things within your communities as well on a much smaller scale. That's what conservatives whine about cancel culture being, right? Like, it does it on all levels of society. We do this automatically without necessarily somebody having to step in to intervene and be the police, right?
So just go back to like mob mentality and just having like no mediator, no state mediator. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm no fan of the state in a lot of respects, but I can see its use, especially when it's like not fully corrupt or authoritarian. And like, you know, they do provide like a mediation service. Like, whereas at this point, it's like if we went with what she was after, this anarchist state, then like there'd be no real buffer between that. Like, people would just be running riot into groups, and that's kind of how it was in when America was first being formed in New York and stuff. It was like a lot of different like kind of tribes and gangs and warfare on the streets and stuff like that. It was pretty constant, actually. So yeah.
And
there's
And they
outliers.
didn't have police for ages, so it was like a pretty fucked up situation for a long time.
So
Just real
I would
quick.
advocate for mediators to begin with.
I wanna
Sure.
toss it
Eventually
to
it
Paradigm
becomes
for a
complex.
minute. I want to toss it to Paradigm. He's been trying to get in, so I want to give it to him. If you've lost the plot, I have a question for you too. But I want to
Give me the question.
Okay, the response, or the question, I should say. So you spoke earlier about how a lot of black communities, right? Within black communities, at least according to Gallup, a lot of them still support the police. A lot of them are against even defunding. In fact, a lot of them want, about half to be specific, want more funding, right? If like how do you address that when most
that's
of the
easy.
people
That's
don't
I don't.
want what you want?
Yeah, I don't even need to. I don't even need
Wrong.
to nuance that. That's just easy. The answer is a lot of people aren't educated on the issues with the police because they don't run into them often. That's what
Wait, so you're telling me this racist police that's bullying the black people and is so bad and horrible, like, most black people just aren't even coming into contact with them and aren't educated about the problems of police and stuff like that? What? How does this work in his mind.
Honest truth. Most black people generally stay out of the lines of, and I'm really being serious about this, especially in inner city situations. Most people believe that by funding the police more, we get rid of the hooligans. It's a separation inside of a black community. That's the honest answer. And I can't have this conversation past this point because it would require a level of empathy that's like,
Paradigm. Can I
it's
ask
designated
you a
to
follow-up question?
certain people. Absolutely.
Okay, so earlier you made the
Thank you for
made
understanding, Connor. I appreciate that.
earlier you made the statement that like if there were more like Hispanic and brown people involved in like immigration enforcement, that they would have a lighter hand and a more humane like set of
I would
behaviors
assume so,
associated with
yes.
them. Okay,
Yes.
so how do you square that with the fact that 30% of ICE agents and 50% of border control come from like Hispanic countries? Like they're people of Hispanic
same
descent, so they
militarization
participate
that-
very, very heavily in the system right now.
Right. The same. It's the system. That's how I'd respond to that. It's the same issue that I'm having, or that they too were having.
So it
earlier.
doesn't actually matter about that. That point was completely bullshit. It's actually just the system that makes them like that. So it doesn't even matter who's working for them. It's just the system, right? So why even make that point?
Here, when it comes to the type of people that police neighborhoods. It's not them. It's the system that they're being driven to by the laws and you. Sorry, let me put this in a better phrase because I feel like I'm jumping
I want to give
ahead
him
in
some
my head.
space, Connor. Let him.
Yeah, I'm listening.
That was a
but
good
I
question.
have
That was a good
something on the tip
question.
of my tongue.
That was a
Yeah, it was a good question.
good question. So, and I hate to bring it here, but maybe because I know you've talked about it a few times. We've tweeted back and forth a few times. It's the same idea as like Hispanics being white supremacists. How is that possible? Like, I can't. That at that level, now I have to say, even if I were to put all Hispanics in that group, they're still enforcing a border policy of the United States, and Joe Biden sucks at like border policy. Like, you see what I mean? I can't fathom or connect the two because it shouldn't work that way. And it is, and that's a shame and a failure of not only us as a people, but that system itself, ICE and immigration.
Okay, but Portland, hold on. Let me interject real quick because I have a counterexample that's very pertinent. We had people. I was hired from outside the community that I policed, but I was raised with like very Christian, pacifistic, turn the other cheek, professional, corporate, white fucking bullshit. Where somebody tells me to go fuck myself to my face, and I'm like, well, you know, sir, that's just your opinion. I appreciate you. I hope you have a beautiful day. Here's a ticket. Whereas we had somebody that we had recruited from the community who came from a rough area, who quote unquote understood the community. And when that same person was cussing him out, he was like, oh, motherfucker, do you know who my family is? Oh, okay, so you know who I fuck with. Oh, okay. You're going to still be talking shit? And then he took off his fucking belt in order to fist fight somebody in the fucking street. Now, here's the thing. If we could all get onto a consensus that get like cops, when somebody's talking too much shit, we can take off our equipment and start fist fighting citizens in the street, and who wins, wins, and loses, loses, and then we all go home at the end of the day. That's actually a contract that I would have relatively signed up for, because I
agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah.
I would love to beat somebody's ass and then go home.
I agree
What?
with you on that one.
Okay, hold on.
I know where
What?
he's coming from. That's why. I know where he's coming
But I don't
But-
think that's like a real societal solution.
That's gonna be a
Actually,
terrible.
people are gonna get
That's gonna
hurt.
be a terrible thing.
People are going to get hurt in really bad ways.
I understand where you're coming from. So I will say it again, it's power dynamics. For people who have never had power, to hand them it, they might not react in the proper way. And that is a structural issue with us and a society. At that point, I can't answer a solution for that, because that happens regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of job. You start making $100,000, you move up to upstate New York, all of a sudden you're talking down on everybody who you used to hang out with. That happens. And I don't.
Okay,
I
hold
would
on.
have-
I want
Yeah, go
to I want to re-articulate what you just said, because I think people probably missed it, but I actually understand it. People not used to power, who are used to the social expectation of you talk too much shit, I'm going to pop you in the fucking mouth, then get invested with the power of the state, but then they still have the older moral system. So it's actually almost like refreshing that they have the old moral system, but then it's like it's also tied to the nefarious arm of the fucking state. So
Yes.
I get it. I get it. I just don't think it would be a good system if we hired like 100% of people from the fucking community, and then every time somebody's talking shit, they're popping off their fucking battle belts in order to fist fight people in the street.
I mean, it's
probably
better
not
than
the
like
best system.
it's
Well,
better than like executing people in the street for like
hold on,
random shit, you know?
I'm
I don't want
I'm
fight
meaning
the
this
guy
will
that ran
never
over my
happen.
kids to incarcerate him. Okay, like I
Okay.
think that the system should have a mechanism for that.
True. Okay. So I'm meaning, but at the same time, like I do think it would be funny if we did set up a society where we're like, we can go one way or the other way. So like, sir, I caught you doing 115 miles, or I caught you doing
Sounds
20
like
miles over
fucking
the speed
dueling
limit.
culture.
Yes, exactly. So like,
Box it
I caught
out.
you-
That's what I'm saying. Box it out.
I caught
Box,
you-
bro.
hold on.
Thank you. Like,
I want to
boys,
articulate
calm
the entire
down.
example. So, like, good afternoon, sir. My name is Officer Cotter from the blah 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 police department. I caught you doing 20 miles over the speed limit. I can either issue you a citation for $115, or you and I can fist fight in this parking lot.
Okay, for Christ's sake, I
Like-
never thought I'd say this, but can we toss it back to Miss Vivian for the most reasonable takes on the panel, please? Because
I was having fun
goddamn,
with
you
that,
guys have
man.
lost the plot.
Yeah.
Listen,
Viv, what do you think of this, proposed system?
it's very
Do you want
anarchist.
to have to fight for your justice in the streets? Or do you think that the systems
I think
that
it's
are in
ridiculous. I
place
think
can
it
be
doesn't.
reformed to satisfy your grievances and still allow for some basic social safety?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it disempowers people who are like physically weak. Obviously, duh. It's very stupid. Disabled
Women will
people
never
who-
have a say
people
again,
who are like
right?
quadriplegic.
Yeah, but she doesn't have this logic for when she's talking about trying to get rid of people having power over other people. But like, you can never get rid of people being stronger than other people. Ah!
Or whatever, never get anything.
We'll
Like-
have female cops. We'll have disabled cops. We'll have a cop in a wheelchair for the disabled people to fist
Okay.
fight on the side of the street. We'll call them
No.
specifically.
Oh,
It's
no!
fucking-
Hey, you can't fist fight with this one. They have a disabled sign on their car. Get
Yeah,
in,
that-
Jimmy. Right? Bring
better-
Jimmy in. Wheel him in.
You're very-
Right?
We'll have
You're very-
better representation. We'll have female cops. We'll have Hispanic cops. We'll have black cops. We'll have disabled cops. We'll have deaf cops.
I
and
don't.
we
I
can
don't
match
care.
you up
Very,
with
very
your
stupid.
cop to duel.
We don't arbitrate things through combat anymore. Okay, they tried that
Yeah.
like back in the Middle Ages, and they dropped it really fucking quickly. Okay, because it led to some dumb shit. Right? Because they were like, well, God will sort them out. Basically, God, whoever wins obviously has God.
I don't know if this conversation is going to get
Time
any
doesn't
more.
feel like he can call the police if there's a fucking home invasion. I know that you have systems of social safety that you feel you can rely on, but I think that the state, if we're going to have one, owes us a level of accountability towards their need to protect us. So I just want to understand if you guys think that extreme radical reforms like this can satisfy an abolitionist viewpoint.
I mean, if you think that that is an extreme radical reform, then that just kind of illustrates what I think we're both saying about how, it's never going to go far enough.
Look, it's literally cited as
You
a
gotta let him answer the question,
idea that-
Portland.
The idea that victims of police violence should receive some kind of compensation, that seems like not a radical proposition at all to me.
What was it? 51 billion on courts. I'm assuming that's payouts to victims. Although it may also just be court fees to fight the cases. They could also win these cases, to be fair. So, okay, maybe it's not all payouts.
It is not a radical proposition, but it is.
But I know the payouts are usually quite large when they do pay out. So I'd imagine that doesn't, because the court costs are not going to cost more than the payouts, right? And when you're getting into billions, that kind of matters. So I'm assuming the bulk of that number is payouts.
A proposition that was put forth, advocated for, and eventually succeeded in being installed by abolitionist advocates and people who were who considered themselves abolitionist advocates, civil rights lawyers, and people who organized around this specific cause.
Yeah.
And reparation, it is the first program of its kind in the country to offer reparations for racially motivated instances of police justice. Does it go far enough? Absolutely not. But what I'm asking you is if there is an ideal set of movements and reforms that we can implement that would satisfy your your viewpoints without needing to tear everything down, rehire a bunch of the same people into a new police force, because guess what? Cops come from communities most of the time. So if you have community police, they're just going to be police that are called something different in a lot of cases. And I think that we need to, be able to talk about what you actually want to see done if it's all about meeting halfway and, realistic solutions.
Okay, that's a great question, and it is currently obviously being debated now. We had the quote unquote riots of the Summer of Love 2020. If we want to play around with that, the way to solve this issue is starting to turn into a very black and white thing, because what I'm hearing across the board is no matter what we do with the police, the system that exists within the arm of the state will still override their compassion and judgment. They will still be forced into a situation where they say, yo, there's drugs in this building. We signed off the warrant. Bring the SWAT team, bring the raid team. They open the door, throw in the flashbang. We heard you had weapons. And then they flashbang a baby. Oh, I'm not talking about a hypothetical. That actually happened. You see what I mean? So now I feel like what we're ending up with is, do we keep the police or do we not? Because whatever we...
Well, based on this one incident, you're like, oh my god, they flashbanged a baby. We just need to get rid of the police. What?
Replace them with has to be radically different in order for us to not end up with the same problems. But we're all noticing that the problems just exist on their own.
Paradigm.
So,
I don't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you, but a question.
Talk to me, baby.
Replacing the police. Do you see that happening realistically? And then, what's the time scale you thinking?
26 years.
Jesus.
Okay.
26. That's very
26.
specific. How did you get to
26.
that number?
Where?
President-
In fucking Camden, New Jersey or some shit? Or fucking some
No,
fucking tiny
no,
ass
this-
fucking town?
No, this is across the United States. I think more people are getting a little bit more hyper aware of the abuse that the state enforces on them through police. They're recording more of it. They're having more conversations on it. Eventually, at some point, a lot of people are going to get up and say, the quote unquote riots of 2020 didn't work. All the BLM stuff didn't work. What happened? The police budgets went up. What can we do? And eventually the community's just going to force the hand. Do we excise these people from our community? What do we do with the if we can't fix them and they won't fix themselves, somebody got to go. Because if nothing's changing, no matter...
And I'm not saying black people, I'm saying the activists. Are you fucking kidding me?
It sounds
do
like
you
what
think
you're,
that
what
normal? Do you think that normal people wouldn't have an issue? Normies wouldn't have you don't think normies wouldn't have an issue with that as well? Do you think
Normies,
this doesn't
you should
affect?
look at
Let me
Chaz as an
let me be very
example.
specific. Yeah, exactly. Let me be very specific. So what happened was, in the wake of the George Floyd killing, there was public outrage and decent support for police reform and even police defunding and Black Lives Matter. All of those things were relatively popular. And what happened is you started...
polling approval for police reform.
Okay, hold on. I got to finish this point.
I know, I'm just saying 95%.
And then what happened was the Summer of fucking Love, where a whole bunch of fucking, burning and downtown areas getting fucking smashed, and, CNN reporters standing outside of fucking CVS pharmacies saying that the riots were mostly peaceful and fucking people getting shot and this kind of bullshit. And so all of that fucking happened, and it went from 30% approval before fucking George Floyd to 90% approval George Floyd. I had fucking conservative customers literally saying hey, listen, I don't support the whole Black Lives Matter, organization, but generally speaking, I think that there's shit that's fucked up. I was literally having conservatives say that shit to me. But then after the fucking Summer of Love, popular support for this shit dropped back down to 30%. So no, there will not be some kind of random leftist excising of law enforcement. What's going to fucking happen is you being the activist people, will try to force this again more people will die and normies will side with law enforcement. Cut a liberal and a fucking fascist bleed. I think a fucking cut a liberal and a fucking statist bleeds. They fucking love the state. They love watching hippies get the shit kicked out of them.
All right, so we're at you agree we have a problem.
Of course we have a problem. That's why I would be an incrementalist and work towards the solutions that I was talking about.
You know why the shit in the fucking summer of love.
I feel like this conversation really isn't going anywhere. This guy's really trying, but he's not getting enough airtime. But this guy also, I do feel like he just talks out of his ass. Like, he has a few little bits and pieces there, but like, when he said 26 years, it would take 26 years. He's just pulling this out of his ass. He doesn't fucking know. He just wants to sound like he has something intelligent to say. Like, I've got it figured out. 26 years it'll take. What? No. I don't believe in Connor's being so long about it. But I don't believe him being given this specific year answer is also right either. It'd probably take a few generations, which is like, what, about 60 odd years, roughly, give or take. Because it has to be with, like, changing attitudes in the cultural zeitgeist. And that usually comes up every 10 or so years as a new generation comes up. So maybe 30 years even, as, like, multiple generations span out. But so yeah, maybe between 30 to 60 years, let's say. But I don't know if I can keep going on with this. I honestly don't. They're not really making any good salient points. They made all the points they need to make. I think Connor has, and this guy, Portland is Burning? They've made some pretty decent points. Vivian's basically ceded it all, but like just can't admit it because she's just an idiot. And this guy, I just don't think he has like sound. He's like agreeing with stuff, and then suddenly making a U-turn, and like, I don't know. I don't even know what's up with this guy. I just don't take him that seriously. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah. I don't think I can carry on with this anymore. It's not going anywhere. There's nothing of value to get from it anymore. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I haven't streamed a long time, but I just had the urge. I saw this stream and I thought, you know what? Let's see if we can weigh in on this. I think I was able to add some points that haven't really been put into this, or refuted a few arguments there. We looked up a few stats. I think we thoroughly demolished the opposition. I think Connor and Portland has done a very good job. So I think our work here is done. I think we can move along now. So thank you to everyone that tuned in. And yeah, give a like, subscribe, all that, whatever the fuck. I don't really care. It's just a hobby for me. But if you do want more of this, please, like I say, do give a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I should stream more, shouldn't I? I will try and stream more. I'm just really lazy. Sorry, guys. Anyway, thank you again, and I'll see you guys soon. Ta-ta. Ta-ta!